Hey guys, welcome to Straw Hat Fiction. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if Luffy inherited the will of Rocks D. Xebec? The Davy Heir by alenthedragon. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button, as your one like motivates me to bring more stories, and subscribe the channel if you are new so you won't miss our latest videos. The sun shone warmly over the golden fields of Fuchsia village, the wind whispering through tall grass that swayed like waves. Birds called from the trees, and laughter echoed through the distance. The carefree sound of a 6.5-year-old boy running wild. Monkey D. Luffy sprinted barefoot through the grass, chasing a butterfly as if it were treasure. His red shirt was half torn, his knees scraped from climbing rocks, but his grin never faded. "Gotcha!" he yelled, leaping, and missing entirely. He tumbled into the dirt, laughing even as dust covered his face. When he rolled over to stand, something strange caught his eye. A figure sat on a lone boulder at the edge of the field, half hidden in the shade of a tree, cloaked and still. Luffy frowned. He didn't remember anyone being there a second ago. Curious, he wiped his nose on his sleeve and trotted closer. "Hey, you lost or something?" The man didn't move. As Luffy approached, the air seemed to change, colder, heavier, yet oddly calm. He stopped a few steps away, tilting his head. The stranger was transparent. Not completely, but enough for Luffy to see the shimmer of the field right through his body. His cloak fluttered though there was no wind, and his eyes, faintly glowing red, lifted slowly to meet the boy's. Luffy blinked. "Whoa, you're see-through," the man chuckled, low and rough, the sound carrying a strange echo. "So you can see me, eh? Guess the blood of D still runs strong." Luffy tilted his head. "D? What's that? You talk funny, mister." The man's smile widened under the hood, sharp and dangerous, but not cruel. "Names are important, boy. But mine hasn't been spoken in this world for a long time." He leaned forward, the edges of his form flickering like smoke. "Tell me, what's yours?" Luffy puffed up proudly. "I'm Monkey D. Luffy, future king of the pirates." For a heartbeat, the air stilled. Then the man laughed, a thunderous, deep sound that rolled like distant cannons. The ground seemed to tremble under it. "King of the pirates, eh? Bold words from such a small brat." Luffy crossed his arms. "I'm not small, and I mean it." The laughter faded, leaving a strange warmth behind. The man slowly stood, his height towering over Luffy, cloak swirling like black mist. "Then perhaps you're just the one I've been waiting for." Luffy's eyes widened. "Waiting for? Me?" The man's voice dropped to a whisper, cold but not unkind. "Yes, Monkey D. Luffy. My name is Rocks D. Xebec, and I have a proposition for you." The wind howled through the field, and for the first time in his young life, Luffy felt the chill of destiny brushing his skin. The ghost's name hung in the air like thunder, Rocks D. Xebec. But instead of awe, all Luffy did was blink. Rocks who? For the first time in decades, Rocks looked insulted. Rocks D. Xebec. The man who shook the seas. The terror of the celestial dragons. The name that. He stopped, watching the blank stare on the boy's face. Luffy just scratched his cheek. "Never heard of ya." Silence. A twitch formed at the corner of Rock's mouth. Then, to his own surprise, he laughed, loud and bitter. "Of course you haven't. The world government scrubbed my name from history, typical." He leaned closer, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "But tell me, boy, you said your name was Monkey D. Luffy." Luffy nodded proudly. "Yup. That's me." Rock's smirk faltered. "Monkey D." He stared at the kid for a long moment. "Wait, don't tell me. You're related to that Monkey D. Garp, aren't you?" Luffy blinked, tilting his head. "You know Gramps?" "Gramps?" Rocks thundered, his voice shaking the grass. "You're telling me that old lunatic is your grandfather?" Luffy rubbed the back of his head, confused. "Yeah, why?" Rocks sighed and rubbed his face with a ghostly hand. "Oh, great. The universe has a sense of humor." He crossed his arms, looking down at the boy. "Tell me, brat, how much do you actually know about your grandfather?" Luffy thought hard, his brows scrunching in deep concentration. He's big and scary. Shouts a lot. Wants me to be a marine. Oh, and he trained me." Rocks raised an eyebrow. "Trained you, huh? What, Taught you how to salute and polish boots. Luffy puffed up proudly. Nope, he threw me into ravines, tied me to balloons, dropped me down mountains. One time he tied me to a log and threw me into the sea. Said it'd make me strong. For a few seconds, even Rox D. Xebec, the man who once tried to conquer the world, was utterly speechless. Then he burst out laughing so hard that his spectral body flickered. Ha ha ha. I knew Garp was a fruitcake, but this takes the damn cake. He slapped his knee, still laughing. Throwing a kid off cliffs to toughen him up, that's insanity even I'd respect. Luffy smiled like it was a compliment. Yup, Gramps says pain builds character. Rox shook his head, still chuckling. The mad dog of the Marines has a grandson who wants to be pirate king, now that's poetic. The laughter faded, replaced by a strange glint in Rox's eyes, a mix of curiosity and fate. Maybe that old fool did something right after all. You've got his spirit, but something else too. The ghost leaned forward, his tone lowering. Tell me, boy, do you really want to be free? To sail beyond any man's reach? Luffy blinked. Of course. That's why I'm gonna be king of the pirates. Rox grinned. The kind of grin that once terrified the seas. Then maybe, Monkey D. Luffy, you and I can help each other. The wind grew still. The golden fields that once danced under the sun now felt heavy, as though the air itself held its breath. Rox stood before the boy, a living echo of a time long buried, his ghostly form flickering like a dying flame. You remind me of him, Rox said quietly. That fool Garp, and that other one, Roger. Both idiots chasing impossible dreams. He chuckled darkly, then looked down at Luffy, eyes glowing faintly red. Tell me, brat, do you want power? Luffy tilted his head. Power? You mean like super strength? Strength, knowledge, will, the kind of power that shakes gods. Rox stepped closer, his voice deepening. I can give you my knowledge, my skill, my mastery of hockey. But you'll have to train for it, nothing comes free. Luffy blinked. What's hockey? Is it food? For a moment, Rox just stared. Then he groaned, dragging a spectral hand down his face. This is going to be a long life, Luffy laughed, scratching his head. He guessed so. The ghost sighed but couldn't help a faint grin. All right, listen carefully. Hockey isn't something you eat. It's your spirit. Your willpower made real. With it, you can crush mountains, sense killing intent, and even strike things no weapon can touch. Luffy's eyes sparkled. Whoa, that sounds awesome. It is, Rox said simply. And if we merge, you'll inherit my understanding of it, my instincts, my fighting style, my history. You'll know what I know, though it'll take years before you can use it properly. He paused, voice softening. But know this, boy. When we merge, I become a part of you. I'll see what you see, feel what you feel. I won't control you, not unless you let me. But our souls will share the same flame. Luffy didn't hesitate. He grinned wide, eyes shining with fearless excitement. That's fine with me. You seem kinda cool, even if you talk weird. For the first time in decades, Rox D. Xebec laughed, genuinely. You're either brave or stupid, maybe both. Just like every D I ever knew. He extended his hand, glowing faintly crimson and gold, his spectral fingers trembling. Then it's decided. 2 generations of D, united as one. Luffy stepped forward, his small hand reaching out. As their palms touched, a shock of energy rippled through the air, black and red lightning bursting from the ground. The wind howled across the fields. Rock's body began to fade, dissolving into motes of light that swirled around Luffy like a storm of shadows and fire. Remember this, boy, his voice echoed as he vanished. Our will is eternal. The glow sank into Luffy's chest, and silence fell once more. When the wind finally stilled, Luffy stood alone, eyes glowing faintly gold and crimson. A strange strength pulsed in his heart. He looked at his hand, still tingling from the touch, and grinned. Guess I've got a new friend, huh, Rox? Far away, thunder rumbled, as if the world itself had felt the birth of something new. Monkey D. Luffy and Rox D. Xebec were now one. The wind still whispered over the fields of Fuchsia village. But Luffy didn't move. He stood frozen, eyes unfocused, his small body trembling as something unseen flooded through his mind. Then it hit him, a surge of memories that weren't his. The world spun away. Flashes of fire. Screaming. Cannons. The roar of monstrous waves swallowing islands whole. Luffy stumbled backward in the vision, surrounded by towering figures, men and women whose mere presence bent the air. A giant of a man with flowing hair and a bacento that could cleave mountains. Whitebeard. A laughing brute drinking sake beside him, Kaido, his body twisting and turning into a dragon. And at the center of it all, Rocks D. Xebec, younger, alive, his grin wide enough to split the sky. "We are the Davy Heirs," Rock's voice thundered across a burning horizon. "We'll take the world and tear it from the gods themselves." The deck of his ship, the Xebec, was filled with monsters. Big Mom's manic laughter echoed. Kaido roared in joy. Shiki's golden mane whipped in the wind. They weren't just pirates. They were forces of nature bound by chaos and ambition. Then came another flash. God Valley. Luffy gasped as his surroundings changed. Lush forests burning, the ground split apart by shockwaves. He saw marines and pirates fighting side by side. A younger monkey D. Garp punched a mountain to rubble, his laughter fierce and wild. Next to him, a man with a familiar straw hat, calm eyes, golden aura, Gold D. Roger. Luffy whispered in awe, "Roger, Gramps," and then he saw them. 5 towering, demonic-looking figures, cloaked in darkness. Their eyes glowing red, their forms unnatural, otherworldly. Each one radiated an energy that made even rocks tremble with rage. Behind them stood a taller shadow, its form almost formless, like the embodiment of night. It watched everything silently. No face, no eyes, only the feeling of being seen by something beyond human. "Who are they?" Luffy muttered. Rock's voice whispered faintly inside his mind. "They called themselves the rulers of the world, celestial gods, but their true name." The tall figure's head turned, and Luffy saw its eyes, empty, yet infinite. "Is Emu." The instant the name echoed, Luffy's heart jolted. The vision shattered like glass. He gasped awake, collapsing to his knees in the middle of the field. Sweat drenched his face, his breath ragged. The world around him was calm again. The golden grass swaying under the sun, as if nothing had happened. Luffy wiped his brow, still shaking. What was that? He looked at his trembling hands. For the first time, he felt something ancient lurking beneath his skin, power, and the weight of memory. After a long moment, he exhaled sharply and forced a grin. "I'll figure it out later, right now, I'm hungry." He dusted off his shorts and ran toward the village. "I bet Makino's got some meat ready." As he vanished down the hill, the wind blew softly behind him, whispering a name lost to history. Rocks D. Xebec. 2 weeks had passed since that strange day in the fields. Fuchsia village had returned to its usual peace, fishermen laughing, children playing, and Makino's bar filled with the scent of stew and sake. Luffy still came by every morning, just like always. But Makino had started noticing things. That morning, she set a plate of food before him, a mountain of meat and rice. Normally, Luffy would have dived into it face first, laughing with his mouth full. But this time, the boy sat upright. He picked up his fork, properly, and began eating calmly, cutting pieces with care. Makino blinked, unsure whether she should be proud or worried. Luffy? You feeling all right?" He looked up, chewing politely. "MMHM. Why?" "You're using the fork." He blinked, glanced at it, then grinned. "Oh. Guess I am." Makino tilted her head, smiling faintly but puzzled. "Well, good manners aren't bad, I suppose." Luffy finished the plate, thanked her, and ran off into the woods, leaving Makino standing there, arms crossed, thinking. That boy's growing up too fast. In the forest behind the village, the air was alive with the sound of steel meeting air. Luffy swung a wooden sword in smooth, measured arcs. Each movement was deliberate, precise, his small body adjusting perfectly to balance and weight. Sweat glistened on his forehead, his eyes sharp with focus. He wasn't just playing, he was training. Every swing came from somewhere deep inside, instinct, memory, experience that wasn't his own. Too slow on the recovery, a voice growled in his head. Luffy sighed, shaking his arms out. I know, it's hard." Rock's faint chuckle echoed through his thoughts. You've got the body of a kid and the will of a storm. Be patient. Even I started with splinters. Luffy grinned. You started as a kid too? Huh, not quite. I started as a nightmare. Luffy laughed, swinging again. Guess I'm your dream version then. Rock's laughter boomed in his mind, deep, proud, and wild. Maybe you are, brat. You're the only one who ever called me cool without flinching. As he trained, flickers of memory bled through his thoughts, flashes of the past. A younger Rock's shouting at his crew aboard his massive ship. Big Mom pouting, arms crossed. This ain't your nursery, Lin, Rock's bellowed. You can't keep bringing toddlers aboard my warship. Luffy laughed so hard he nearly dropped his sword. You really said that? Aye. And she threw a cannon at me for it. The laughter between boy and ghost echoed through the trees. Light and strange, the laughter of two pirates separated by generations but bound by fate. When Luffy stopped, panting, he looked down at his wooden sword. The cuts in the bark around him formed clean lines, deeper and sharper than before. Not bad, Rox muttered. You'll make a fine swordsman yet. Luffy smiled, eyes shining with pride. Yeah, just wait till I show Gramps. Rox groaned. Please don't. Luffy laughed again, swinging one last time, the blade cutting air so sharply it made the leaves tremble. Above the forest, a single seagull circled high, watching. The sun beat down on Fuchsia's docks, glittering across the calm sea. The villagers gathered in awe as a large ship with crimson sails approached. On its flag was a simple symbol, a skull with crossed sabers beneath it. Luffy stood on the pier, staring, eyes wide. So that's them, pirates. Inside his mind, Rock's voice rumbled. Red sails, that mark, I don't know that Jolly Roger. As the ship anchored, laughter echoed. A tall man with red hair jumped down from the deck, coat swaying, a familiar grin on his face. Shanks. The villagers cheered his name, red-haired Shanks. But Luffy just stood still, transfixed. Not by his power, but by the hat on his head. That straw hat. Luffy squinted. That hat, no, Rox muttered in disbelief. That belonged to Roger. Luffy blinked. You mean, it belonged to the Pirate King? Aye, Rox said darkly. And the fact that this red-haired pup's wearing it means he's tied to him somehow. As Shanks approached the bar, Luffy ran after him, bursting inside. Makino looked up from pouring drinks and smiled. Luffy. Don't bother the guests. But Luffy's eyes were locked on Shanks. Hey, red hair. You a pirate, right? Shanks smirked. Last I checked. Then take me with you. The bar went quiet. Then his crew burst into laughter. You? A tiny shrimp like you? You'll get lost in a bottle of rum, kid? Even Shanks laughed good-naturedly. Sorry, little man. I don't take kids on my ship. Luffy pouted. Why not? I'm strong. Sure you are, Shanks teased. But strength isn't all that matters at sea. Luffy clenched his fists, his pride flaring. Rock's voice rumbled inside him, amused. He's mocking you, boy. Prove him wrong. Luffy's eyes hardened. Without hesitation, he grabbed a knife off the counter. Then I'll prove I'm not scared of anything. Before Shanks or anyone could move, Luffy stabbed himself just below his left eye. The entire bar screamed. Makino gasped. A few pirates jumped to their feet. Blood trickled down Luffy's cheek, but he stood tall, trembling, defiant. See? I'm tough. Not even pain scares me. Inside his mind, Rox roared. Idiot. You could have lost your damn eye. The ghost's voice thundered through his skull, echoing like cannon fire. You're insane, brat. Luffy winced but grinned anyway. Guess that makes us the same, huh? Even Rox had no words for that. Shanks crouched beside him, torn between shock and admiration. He wiped the blood with a cloth and smiled faintly. You're crazy, kid, but you've got guts. I like that. Luffy beamed through the pain. Then take me. Shanks ruffled his hair. Not yet. You've got to grow stronger first. As the red-haired crew laughed and ordered drinks, Rock's voice whispered from deep within Luffy's soul, half proud, half horrified. You're madder than I ever was. Luffy just smiled through the blood. Guess I'm on the right track, then. The party in Makino's bar was loud enough to shake the walls. Pirates sang, mugs clashed, and laughter echoed through Fuchsia village. In the middle of it all sat Luffy, his cheek freshly bandaged, a small scar glinting just below his left eye, the mark of his first bravery. Makino stood behind him, hands on her hips, glaring down with the full fury of a big sister. "What were you thinking, stabbing yourself like that?" Luffy grinned sheepishly. "I wanted to prove I'm tough." "You could have blinded yourself." He rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, Rocks already yelled at me for that." Makino blinked. "Who's Rocks?" No one," Luffy said quickly, waving his hands. Inside his mind, Rocks muttered darkly. "Smart save, brat." Shanks leaned on the counter beside them, a smirk on his face and a bottle of sake in hand. "You're one crazy kid, you know that?" Luffy frowned. "I'm not crazy, I just wanted to prove myself to you." Shanks chuckled and shook his head. "You're too young to prove anything, kid. The sea's no playground." Luffy puffed his chest out. "Not for me. My punches are like pistols. I can fight with a sword, somewhat, and I'm a good swimmer." Makino raised an eyebrow. "Sword fighting? Since when are you interested in that?" Luffy blinked, then scratched his head. Just something I picked up." "Picked up from me, obviously," Rocks grumbled inside his head. "At least you're learning to swing a blade right." Makino just sighed, deciding she didn't want to know. Shanks laughed, reaching over to pat Luffy on the back. "You've got spirit, I'll give you that. Here, drink up, future pirate." He slid a small mug toward him. Luffy's face lit up. "Really? Thanks." He grabbed the cup and lifted it proudly. Inside his mind, Rock's voice suddenly yelled, loud enough to make him twitch. "Not that, you idiot, too late." Luffy had already taken a big gulp. The whole bar roared with laughter. Shanks slapped the counter, nearly spilling his drink. "Ha! Still too young. I don't know a single pirate who drinks juice instead of sake." Luffy's cheeks puffed up, his tiny fist slamming the counter. "Shanks, you tricked me." Makino groaned and pinched the bridge of her nose. "Both of you are impossible." Inside Luffy's head, Rocks sighed, a long, defeated growl that sounded almost like laughter. "Oh, brother, first he stabs himself, now he's drinking juice. At this rate, I'll be haunting a corpse by next week." Luffy crossed his arms, glaring at Shanks. "I'm gonna get stronger, and next time I'll drink real pirate stuff." Shanks grinned. "Then I'll be waiting, little man." As the pirates cheered again, Luffy laughed along, unaware that his laughter carried the faint echo of another voice, older and darker, mingling with his own. Makino's bar was lively as always, Shanks and his crew laughing, drinking, and singing off-key while Luffy pestered them with questions about the sea. The door slammed open. A gust of dust swept in, followed by the sound of boots and ugly laughter. Higuma the bandit and his men swaggered inside, the smell of smoke and arrogance filling the air. "Oi," Higuma sneered, tapping his katana's hilt, "you the pirates everyone's talking about? Heard the Marines got a price on your heads. Guess they ain't worth much if you're hiding in a village tavern." The red-haired pirates went silent. Shanks simply smiled, calm and lazy as always. "Sorry, friend, we're all out of trouble today. Try again tomorrow." Higuma's lip curled. "I don't take orders from trash like you." He grabbed a bottle from the counter, uncorked it, and poured it over Shanks' head, sake dripping down his hair and coat. For a long moment, nobody moved. The pirates stared, Makino froze, and even Higuma smirked, waiting for a reaction. Then, from behind the counter, a quiet voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Get lost, trash." Every head turned. Luffy sat on the counter, elbows on his knees, watching Higuma with eyes far too calm for a child. His voice was soft but heavy, something ancient coiled inside it. Higuma blinked. "What did you just say, brat?" Luffy didn't even blink. "You deaf, or just too stupid to understand? I said get lost, trash." The room fell silent. Even Shanks stopped mid-laugh, his crew exchanged uneasy glances. Higuma snarled and stomped toward him. "You little." He didn't finish. Luffy moved. Fast, too fast for human eyes. He snatched the sword from Higuma's sheath, his body twisting instinctively, and before anyone could react, the blade sank deep into the bandit's chest. A wet gasp escaped Higuma's lips as his eyes went wide. The bar filled with the sound of metal and blood hitting wood. Time froze. Makino's hand covered her mouth. The red-haired crew stared in stunned silence. Even Shanks, for once, was speechless. Luffy stood perfectly still, breathing steady, his expression unreadable. Slowly, he let go of the sword. Higuma collapsed at his feet. "He was disrespectful to you," Luffy said finally, his tone matter of fact, "and he threatened to hurt Makino." His words were soft, but the weight behind them chilled everyone to the bone. Shanks' eyes hardened. "Luffy, what have you done?" The boy looked down at his small hands, steady, no tremor, no fear. He looked back up at Shanks, confused. "What?" He was a bad man. Inside Luffy's mind, Rock's voice rumbled, deep, conflicted. "That was instinct, my instinct. Damn it, boy, you just killed a man without thinking." Luffy's brow furrowed, the faintest tremor finally breaking through his calm. Makino whispered shakily, "Luffy, you." The red-haired pirates stood motionless as the scent of blood filled the air. The laughter of moments ago now replaced by silence. And for the first time since merging with Rock's Xebec, Monkey D. Luffy realized what it meant to bear a monster's soul. The silence after Higuma's death hung heavy over the bar. Makino trembled behind the counter, and even Shanks' usually easygoing crew looked shaken. "Get him out of here," Shanks said quietly. His tone left no room for argument. His men grabbed the surviving bandits by their collars and threw them out into the dust. The door slammed behind them, leaving only the pirates, Makino, Shanks, and the boy who had just killed a man without blinking. Luffy stood there, staring down at the blood on the floor, his expression empty. Inside, Rock's voice was a low rumble. "First kill's always the quietest. It'll hit you later, boy." Luffy didn't answer. His eyes drifted toward the bar, toward a small wooden chest, half open, sitting near a stack of empty bottles. Something about it drew him in. A strange, pulsing warmth, like the chest itself was alive. He walked toward it. The room around him felt distant, muffled. He flipped the latch and slowly lifted the lid. Inside was a fruit, spiraled, strange, almost glowing faintly gold and white. And in his mind, Rock's voice broke. "No, it can't be, after all this time." What's wrong?" Luffy asked quietly. "Kid, listen to me. Don't think, just do it. Eat it, now, trust me." Luffy hesitated only a second, then grabbed the fruit and took a huge bite. The taste hit him instantly, bitter, rubbery, awful. Blah. That's gross. He kept chewing, gagging at the texture. At that moment, the red-haired pirates returned, dusting off their coats. "That'll teach those mountain rats," Shanks started, then froze. His eyes went wide. "Luffy, what are you eating?" Luffy blinked, mid-chew. "Fruit." Shanks' face turned pale. He lunged forward, grabbing Luffy by the legs and shaking him upside down. "Spit it out. Now. That's a devil fruit, you idiot." "No." Rock's voice thundered in Luffy's head. "Swallow it, now." Luffy gasped, then gulped. The last chunk slid down his throat. "Good boy," Rox growled. For a heartbeat, the world went silent, then it exploded. A shockwave rippled through the bar, shaking the floorboards. Luffy's body twitched, his veins glowing faintly gold. He hit the ground with a thud as Shanks dropped him, coughing. "Luffy! What's happening?" Makino cried. Luffy groaned, trying to stand, then his legs stretched. They snapped outward like rubber bands, sending his feet flying up and his head smashing into the floorboards. "OWWW!" He yelped, rubbing his head. The pirates all gawked. Shanks' jaw dropped. You ate the gum-gum fruit," but inside Luffy's mind, Rock's tone was grave. "No, that wasn't the gum-gum fruit, you fool. That was the fruit of the sun, the one even gods feared." Luffy blinked, dazed, still pulling his arms like elastic. "Hey. This feels weird." Shanks just stared at him, speechless, while deep inside Luffy's soul, Rox whispered in awe. "You've just eaten destiny itself, boy." The bar had gone silent again. Only the faint creak of the floor and the distant cry of seagulls filled the air. Luffy sat cross-legged on the counter, legs still a little rubbery, grinning as he stretched his fingers. Shanks crouched in front of him, face pale with disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Luffy tilted his head. "Sure do." Shanks blinked. "You do?" "Yup," the boy said cheerfully. "I ate the Hito no Mi, model Nika." Every pirate in the room froze. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Shanks' hand slipped from the counter. What did you just call it?" Luffy looked confused. "The sun god fruit. Rocks told me that's its real name." Shanks' blood ran cold. "Rocks," before he could finish, Luffy added innocently, "Yeah. Rocks Xebec." The name hit like a cannon blast. Lucky Roo stopped mid-bite. Usopp's pipe fell from his mouth. Beckman's eyes narrowed, studying the child as if he were staring at a ghost. Makino clutched the bar towel in silence. Shanks swallowed hard. "Kid, where did you hear that name?" Luffy looked straight at him, his tone suddenly steady, too steady for a child. "He's right here. In me." Shanks felt his stomach drop. "What?" Luffy nodded, tapping his chest. "He merged with me. Said he'd been cursed to wander until he found someone worthy. He told me everything, about his crew, God Valley, even the celestial dragons." No one spoke. The faint clink of a bottle rolling on the floor sounded like thunder. Luffy kept going, unaware of the weight his words carried. "He told me you'd be surprised, but it's okay. You're not bad like the people he hated." Rock's voice murmured inside his mind. "Careful, boy. You're scaring the drunk." But Luffy went on, pointing at Shanks' straw hat. "That hat, Captain Roger gave it to you, didn't he?" Shanks froze. "Rox said Roger wore one just like it," Luffy continued. "He said only a man Roger trusted would carry it next. You fight like him too. Sword in your right hand, same stance. You even drink like him." Shanks' mouth opened, but no words came. His crew exchanged looks, none daring to breathe. Finally Beckman spoke, voice low. "Captain, he shouldn't know that. Only Roger's crew did." Shanks slowly sat down, rubbing his temples. "Yeah, I know." He looked back at Luffy, a little boy smiling like this was any normal day. Inside those eyes, though, he saw something else. The spark of the sun and the shadow of the abyss staring back together. Shanks whispered, half to himself, half to the ghost he couldn't see. "Roger, what kind of storm did we just inherit?" 3 weeks had passed since Shanks learned the truth, that within Monkey D. Luffy lived the soul of Rox Xebec. At first, he'd wanted nothing to do with it. The mere idea of training a boy possessed by one of history's greatest monsters made his skin crawl. The stories of God Valley were burned into every veteran's mind, the day Rox tried to take the world and vanished into legend. But through Luffy, Rox spoke again, and what he said changed everything. It was late one night beneath the stars when the ghost, using Luffy's voice, told Shanks the truth. How Emu had cursed him, how he'd been twisted into something less than human, forced to slaughter friend and foe alike. How, in the end, he'd begged Roger and Garp to end him before he lost what little was left of his soul. Shanks hadn't wanted to believe it, but the pain behind Luffy's words was too raw to be a lie. So, against every instinct, red-haired Shanks stayed. Training began the next morning, and to his surprise, it went smoothly. The kid was relentless. A storm of curiosity and laughter with Rock's razor instincts humming just beneath. In 3 short weeks, the 7-year-old brat had already learned the fundamentals of hockey. His observation was still wild, but Shanks could feel it. That spark of awareness flickering every time Luffy moved. His armament was crude, more instinct than discipline, but the boy's fists were starting to sting even through Shanks' guard. And then there was the sword. Shanks had given him a real blade 2 weeks in, a simple steel katana, more for balance than battle. Luffy treated it like treasure. He trained until his hands bled, copying every stance, every swing. The air around him began to split with every arc, tiny bursts of compressed wind snapping through the forest. Airblades, Shanks had called them. Luffy grinned so wide he nearly dropped the sword. Even Rox seemed impressed. The brat learns faster than half my old crew." 3 days later, Luffy had run up to Shanks on the shore, panting and wild-eyed. "Shanks. Look what I figured out." Before Shanks could ask, the boy's body flushed red. Steam hissed from his skin as veins bulged and muscles tightened. Then, faster than sight, Luffy vanished and reappeared behind a boulder, his sword flashing crimson light as it cut clean through solid rock. The pieces slid apart with a heavy thud. "Gear second," Luffy announced proudly, chest puffed out. "Rocks helped me think of it." Shanks had just stared, half in awe, half in disbelief, while the ghost inside laughed like thunder. Now, standing beneath the setting sun, Shanks watched Luffy swing again and again, every motion stronger, sharper, more certain. The boy's rubber skin shimmered faintly in the light, steam rising from his shoulders. He was smiling. That same impossible, fearless grin. And Shanks, despite himself, felt something unexpected. Hope. For the first time in years, red-haired Shanks wasn't just looking at a boy. He was looking at a future that terrified and inspired him in equal measure. The fire crackled low that night, throwing red light across the shore. Shanks sat with his back to the sea, a bottle of sake resting by his boot, while Luffy poked at the flames with a stick. The boy's hair was a wild mess of curls and steam, his skin still faintly glowing from training. Shanks had been quiet for a long time, lost in thought. Finally, he spoke. "Rocks," he said into the night, "why did God Valley really happen?" For a long while, there was only the sound of the waves. Then Luffy's eyes changed, the color darkening, his posture stiffening. When Rocks spoke through him, his voice was older, heavier, fretted with regret. "It wasn't for power or glory," the ghost said quietly. "It was because I wanted to get my children out." Shanks blinked. "Your children?" Rocks froze. Even through Luffy's face, guilt flashed like lightning. He tried to cover it with a snarl. "Forget it," slip of the tongue. But Luffy leaned forward, eyes wide. "Wait, you had kids, Mr. Rocks?" The pirate inside groaned. "Blast it, boy," Shanks' voice cut through the tension. "You had children, Xebec." His tone wasn't mocking. It was disbelief, raw and human. "You, of all people?" There was a pause. Then Rocks sighed, long, weary, almost human again. "Luffy," he said through the boy, "tell the red-haired fool to put his hand on your shoulder. It's easier if I talk to both of you directly." Shanks hesitated, then did as asked. The moment his hand touched Luffy, the air grew cold. Shadows gathered like smoke, and a voice, deep, echoing, alive, filled the space between them. "Fine," Rocks said. "Guess it's time I told you both the truth." He turned his words toward Luffy. "Tell me, lad, ever wonder who your parents are?" Luffy blinked. "My parents? I have a mom and dad?" "Aye," Rocks said softly. "Your father is Garp's brat, a man called Monkey D. Dragon." Shanks' bottle hit the sand with a sharp crack. "The leader of the Revolutionary Army?" Rocks chuckled grimly. "Correct. And your mother," he hesitated, voice trembling for the first time in decades. "My daughter, my eldest child." Shanks' eyes widened. "What? She died giving birth to you, lad," Rocks continued, sorrow bleeding through every word. "When she was a girl, I entrusted her to Shikayaku. She owed me a favor, to keep her safe. Her name was Triatoma, the former empress of Amazon Lily. Her true name was Davy D. Triatoma." Shanks stared into the fire, the reflection of the flames dancing in his eyes. The pieces clicked together, the D in Luffy's name, the impossible will, the mix of light and darkness inside him. Luffy tilted his head, simple and sincere. "So, you're my grandpa too, Mr. Rocks?" Rocks' laughter rumbled softly, echoing from the sea itself. "Aye, lad. Seems I am." The waves rolled against the shore, carrying his words into the night, and for the first time since God Valley, Rocks D. Xebec sounded at peace. Morning sunlight spilled through the palms of Fuchsia's eastern grove. The air shimmered with heat and tension as Shanks and Luffy faced one another, swords drawn, bare feet in the sand. "All right, brat," Shanks said, rolling his shoulders. "No more easy swings today. Show me what you've got." Luffy grinned, steam curling from his skin. "Heh, you asked for it." Rock's voice echoed inside his mind, low and steady. "Focus, lad. Feel the pressure before you strike. Don't swing your sword, command it." Luffy's stance tightened. The wooden posts around them cracked as his aura thickened, light, laughter, and something ancient coiling together. Shanks stepped forward, blade glinting, and their swords met with a thunderclap that split the sand. The shockwave rippled outward, snapping palm leaves clean off their stems. Shanks' eyes widened. The kid's strength had doubled since yesterday. "Not bad," he shouted, parrying, "but you're leaving your left wide." He never finished. The air went black and gold all at once, a storm of invisible power bursting from Luffy's body. Lightning arced across the beach as the sky itself seemed to flinch. Shanks barely had time to register the sensation before it hit him, a wave of Conqueror's haki so dense it hummed like thunder. WH. The blast tore through the grove. Sand exploded, trees bowed, and Shanks was hurled backward like a cannonball, smashing straight through a palm trunk and landing flat in the surf. The tree creaked, snapped, and fell beside him. Luffy blinked, sword still raised, hair whipping in the wind. Shanks? You okay?" From the water came a groan, then laughter, loud, pained, and proud. Shanks sat up, rubbing his head where a lump was already forming. "Guess you're learning, Luffy," he said with a grin. "Didn't expect you to unlock Conqueror's haki that hard, let alone advanced Conqueror's haki, asterisk." Luffy tilted his head. "Advanced what now?" Rock's voice boomed inside him, full of pride. "Advanced, boy. You didn't just scare him. You wrapped your haki around your sword. That's what kings do." Shanks climbed to his feet, dripping seawater, still smiling despite the ache in his skull. He looked at the boy. The 7-year-old who stood barefoot in the sand, sword humming faintly with black lightning, and couldn't help but feel a shiver of awe. "Roger couldn't control it at that age," he muttered under his breath. "Neither could I." Luffy scratched his cheek, sheepish. Sorry about the tree." Shanks waved him off. "Palm trees grow back. Heads don't. Next time, warn me before you blow me halfway to town." Rocks laughed deep within, pride thick in his voice. "That's my bloodline, red hair. The world once trembled before it, and it will again." The wind carried the scent of salt and promise as the two pirates, one of flesh, one of spirit, and one still learning to be both, stood beneath the golden sun, grinning at the chaos they'd just created. The morning sky burned gold as the red force prepared to sail. The villagers stood along the dock, waving and calling farewells, while gulls cried overhead. Shanks stood near the gangplank, coat rippling in the sea breeze, looking down at the boy who had changed his plans, his temper, and, maybe, his heart. Luffy grinned wide, hands on his hips, a wooden sword strapped to his back and his new steel blade at his waist. 3 weeks ago, he'd been just a wild child chasing butterflies. Now, he was something else, something larger, brighter, older than his years. "Well," Shanks said, squatting down to eye level, "guess it's about time I shove off." Luffy's smile wavered. "You really gotta go?" Shanks nodded. I can't stay tied to one port forever. The sea calls us pirates sooner or later." Rock's voice muttered from within. "A pity. I was startin' to like the fool." Shanks chuckled, sensing the faint echo. "Hey, I'll take that as a compliment, Ghost." He took off his straw hat, the one that had once belonged to Gold D. Roger, and stared at it for a long, quiet moment. The edges were worn, the crown faded, but it still carried the weight of a promise that had shaped an era. "Luffy," he said softly, placing it atop the boy's head. "This hat's seen more of the world than most men ever will. It belonged to my captain before me, and now, it's yours. Give it back to me when you've become a great pirate." Luffy froze, eyes wide, small hands trembling as they touched the brim. Inside his mind, Rocks sighed, a strange mix of nostalgia and irritation. "Oh great, my grandson's wearing Roger's hat. That's poetic irony at its finest." Shanks smiled faintly, then reached behind his back and drew a long, cloth-wrapped object. He unrolled it carefully, a sword, simple but elegant, the hilt bound in red leather, the guard shaped like twin wings. "This," Shanks said, handing it over, "is for your journey. Had it forged last week. She's light, fast, and sharp enough to cut the wind if you treat her right." Luffy took it as though it were sacred, awe shining in his eyes. Then, to everyone's surprise, he dropped to his knees and bowed deeply before Shanks, his forehead nearly touching the dock. "Thank you for everything, Shanks," he shouted. The red-haired captain blinked, stunned. Then a slow smile spread across his face. So powerful, yet so humble, he murmured. Inside Luffy's head, Rocks groaned so loud that it nearly echoed aloud. Oh, for the love of... Get up, kid. Don't you dare embarrass me like this. We're pirates, not monks. Luffy stayed bowed. But he gave me a sword, he whispered back. So what? I once gave Kaido a beating and he didn't kneel. Get up before I start haunting the both of you. Shanks laughed, having no idea what was going on inside the boy's head. You're a strange one, Luffy. Luffy looked up, still grinning. Guess it runs in the family. The Red Force's anchor lifted. As Shanks walked up the ramp, he turned once more, raising a hand in farewell. See you out there, Pirate King. The wind caught his coat as the ship sailed toward the horizon. Luffy stood watching until the red sails vanished from sight, hand gripping the sword, hat shadowing his eyes. Behind his smile, Rock's voice whispered softly, proud, distant, and almost trembling. Make me proud, lad. This time, carve a legend they can't erase. 2 weeks later, the calm morning in Fuchsia shattered under the roar of cannons. A marine warship loomed over the bay, its massive shadow stretching across the village docks. Fishermen scattered, seagulls screamed, and Makino groaned, already guessing who it was. Sure enough, a voice like thunder echoed across the shore. Luffy. Where's that brat? Villagers winced. Luffy didn't even look up from where he was training in the clearing. Sword flashing in the sun, he grinned. Hey. Guess Gramps finally showed up. Inside, Rocks chuckled darkly. Oh, the old fruitcake arrives. Haven't heard that bark in decades. Moments later, Vice Admiral Monkey D. Garp stormed through the tree line, his white cape snapping behind him. He looked ready to punch a mountain. Luffy. He barked. What's this I hear about you training with a sword? He got his answer before Luffy could even speak. The boy swung his blade in a clean arc, and a shimmering wave of compressed air exploded forward, slicing clean through a line of rocks like butter. The resulting blast of wind surprised Garp. For a moment, the old marine just stared, wide-eyed, jaw hanging. Then he exploded. What the hell is this? Luffy turned, smiling like it was the most normal thing in the world. Oh, hey, Gramps. Rock's voice snickered inside his mind, still loud as ever, that old bastard. Garp stomped closer, face red. Explain, brat, now. Luffy puffed out his chest, glowing with pride. Cool, huh? Red Hair Shanks was here. He taught me sword stuff. Oh, and... He paused dramatically, grinning wider. I ate a devil fruit. Garp froze mid-step, eyes twitching. You what? Before he could explode again, Luffy aimed his hand toward a boulder. Watch this. Gum pistol. His arm stretched, rocketing forward with impossible speed. It blasted straight past Garp, smashing into a boulder 20 meters away, shattering it into gravel. The recoil snapped his arm back, and as it did, Garp saw it, black lightning licking across the boy's fist, the sheen of hardened hockey coating his skin. The Vice Admiral stood silent for a long moment, mouth open. Then, slowly, an enormous grin spread across his weathered face. My grandson, he said proudly, learned to use a sword, a devil fruit, and hockey while I was gone. Huh. You'll make Admiral by 20, maybe younger. I'll have to thank that red-haired punk. Rocks groaned from within. Admiral, over my dead ghost. Luffy scratched his head, still smiling. Thanks, Gramps, but... Garp blinked. But what? The boy's grin sharpened, that glint of chaos flickering behind his eyes. The mix of childlike wonder and ancient fire that belonged to both D's and devils. I'm not gonna be a marine, Luffy said proudly. I'm gonna be a pirate. He paused just long enough for the world to stop breathing. Like Grandpa Rocks. The words hit Garp harder than a cannonball. He froze, eyes wide, face twitching between disbelief and horror. His voice dropped to a whisper, barely more than a growl. What did you just say? For a long, terrifying second, Fuchsia Village was silent. Then Vice Admiral Garp's roar shook the treetops. Grandpa Rocks? Seagulls took off in panic. Makino dropped a tray inside the bar. Even the waves seemed to retreat from the shore. Garp's eyes bulged, veins throbbing on his forehead. Where did you hear that name, boy? Who filled your head with this idiocy? Was it dragon? It was, wasn't it? That damn son of mine? Luffy blinked, completely unfazed. Dad, nah, he didn't tell me anything. Garp froze mid-rant. Wait, you know who your father is? Luffy nodded cheerfully. Yep, Monkey D. Dragon, he's my dad. The old marine's jaw dropped so hard it might have cracked the pier. You actually know that? How? And my mom, Luffy continued, oblivious to the emotional meltdown unfolding before him, was Davy D. Triatoma, the former empress of Amazon Lily. Garp looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a sea train. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again. What? She died when I was born, Luffy said softly, rubbing the back of his neck. But Grandpa Rox told me all about her. That last sentence hit like a cannonball. Garp's pupils shrank. You said, Rox? Yeah. Luffy grinned. 6 months ago, I met him in the forest. His spirit merged with mine. Now we're kinda like roommates. Inside, Rox snorted. Roommates? I prefer co-captain. Garp's entire face turned red. His fists clenched, aura flaring like an angry sun. Roommates? You mean you let that damn demon possess you? Before Luffy could answer, Garp grabbed him by the legs, hoisted him upside down and started shaking him like a sandbag. Get out of my grandson, you damn devil, he bellowed. Come out and face me like a man. Luffy flailed, arms stretching wildly. Gramps. Stop, I'm gonna puke. Too late. Luffy's face turned green as his hat spun off into the sand. Gra amps. Inside his head, Rock's laughter boomed loud enough that Luffy could barely hear his own screams. Yap, still the same fruitcake as ever, ha ha ha, oh, I missed this. Garp kept shaking, shouting between every swing. Get out of my grandson. Luffy tried to reply, words slurred by gravity. I can't, he lives here now. The old marine froze mid-shake, panting. He what? Rock's voice thundered outward, echoing faintly from Luffy's chest. Told you once already, old man. I'm not in him. I'm part of him. You can punch the air all you like, but this D's spirit is mine as much as it's his. Garp's eye twitched. You rotten ghost, Rox chuckled darkly. Good to see you too, Garp. Luffy dangled helplessly upside down. Gramps, please, I'm gonna. He didn't finish. A moment later, a muffled splat echoed through the clearing. Garp's expression twisted from fury to disgust. You little, ah. Rox laughed so hard inside that Luffy could barely breathe. Yup. Same old fruitcake. After nearly 10 minutes of yelling, shaking, and enough chaos to make the local birds evacuate Fuchsia entirely, Vice Admiral Garp finally took a long breath, rubbed his temples, and calmed down, mostly. He stood in front of Luffy, who was now sitting cross-legged in the sand, dizzy and covered in dust. The old marine's voice dropped into that commanding growl that once made pirates weep. That's it, Garp said, pointing a massive finger at his grandson. You're done running wild, boy. I'm dragging your sorry ass to Marine Academy this instant. You will be a Marine, mister, and you will like it. Luffy blinked, scratching his head. Eh. And as for you, Garp added, glaring at the empty air, Rox. For your crimes against humanity, piracy, and common sense, you're gonna serve right alongside him. Inside, Rox exploded. Oh hell no, over my dead ghost. Kid, tell your grandpa. Luffy tilted his head. Why would I tell Gramps to suck on a rooster? Just trust me, Rox groaned. Say it exactly like that. Luffy nodded seriously, stood up straight, saluted, and with all the confidence of a future king, shouted. Gramps. Rox says go suck on a cock, you old fruitcake. Time froze. Makino, watching from the doorway, dropped her broom. A distant seagull choked mid-cry. Garp's face turned a shade of red that could melt steel. Then came the inevitable. Bam! A gigantic fist of love crashed down on Luffy's head, sending up a puff of sand and a scream that echoed all the way to the forest. Even Rox felt it inside, wincing. Ow, I felt that. What the hell are your bones made of, old man? Garp growled, cracking his knuckles. You got a mouth just like your father, I oughta. But before he could start another tirade, Luffy, still clutching his aching head, looked up and said, "Okay, Gramps. I'll go." Garp froze mid-rant, blinking in surprise. "You will?" Luffy nodded solemnly. "Yep." The Vice Admiral crossed his arms, a proud smirk forming. "Finally, you're showing some sense." Luffy grinned wider. "Grandpa Rocks said when we arrive, we can play a game." Garp raised an eyebrow. "A game?" "Yeah," Luffy chirped. "It's called, How Long Will It Take for Me to Get Thrown Out?" Garp's smirk vanished. "What?" Luffy continued cheerfully, quoting Rock's word for word. "Grandpa Rocks said he bets 1 hour, max." For a heartbeat, the entire world went quiet again. Then Garp's bellow shook the island. ROOCKS. Inside, the ghost's laughter rolled like thunder. Ha ha ha. Fuchsia's breeze had gone still. The waves rolled softly, unaware that history was quietly unraveling on the shore. Garp stood, fists clenched, his temper trembling at the edge. "Boy, I swear, if I hear another word about pirates, I'm gonna beat the sense into you myself." Luffy stood firm despite the bruises and sand caked across his hair. His voice came out calm but sharp, like steel under silk. "Gramps, you can beat me to a pulp if you want, but I'm never joining the Marines, not ever." That stopped Garp cold. Luffy's eyes, usually so bright and innocent, were burning with something older. "If you're that determined, go ahead. Kill me now. 'Cause I'm not going." The old Marine froze. For the first time in years, he saw the will of AD staring back at him. The same look he'd seen in Roger's eyes, and Dragon's, and even his own reflection long ago. Then Luffy said something that made the air itself feel heavier. "I know, Gramps. I know everything about the Celestial Dragons, about the world government. Rock's memories are mine now." The words hit like cannon fire. Garp's shoulders slackened, his expression turning from rage to weary silence. The weight of decades sat on his chest. "You know," he said quietly. Luffy nodded. "Yeah, all of it." For a long moment, the only sound was the ocean. Then Garp sighed, deep, tired, like the exhale of a man who'd been carrying too much for too long. "I've been dreading this day," he admitted. "That's why I wanted you, and Ace, to become Marines. Thought maybe you two could fix what's rotten inside it." Luffy blinked. "Ace?" The name slipped out before Garp could stop himself. His eyes went wide, mouth tightening. Nobody, forget I said anything." Inside Luffy's mind, Rock's laughter rumbled like thunder. "So he did take him. I wondered who snatched Roger's whelp." Luffy frowned. "Grandpa Rocks, who's Ace?" The ghost's tone softened slightly, almost nostalgic. "Portgas D. Ace, or as the world would damn well call him, Gold D. Roger's son." Luffy's eyes widened in shock. "Roger? You mean?" Before he could finish, Garp's massive hand clamped over his mouth. "Not so loud, you idiot. We're in a field, true, but you never know who's listening." Luffy muffled a protest, eyes wide, while Rocks just laughed inside him. "Hey. The old dog's still sharp when it counts." Garp finally released his grip, glancing around the clearing with paranoia only a veteran Marine could have. "That name is a death sentence if spoken too freely. You hear me, boy? Not a word about Ace or Roger to anyone." Luffy rubbed his mouth, still curious but now quietly respectful. "Got it, Gramps." Rocks murmured deep within him, his voice half amused, half respectful. For all his barking, that old fool's got guts. Protecting Roger's bloodline, even I can respect that. Garp turned away, staring out toward the horizon where Shanks had once sailed. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Maybe someday, you'll understand, brat, why I'm so afraid of what you'll become." Luffy just smiled softly, wind tugging at his hat. "Maybe, Gramps. But I'm still gonna be free." The sun had begun to set behind the hills, painting Fuchsia Village gold. The tension between grandfather and grandson had finally settled into something more like reluctant respect. Garp exhaled loudly, crossing his arms. His brow was still furrowed, but the edge of anger had faded. "Fine," he said gruffly. "You want to be a pirate so bad? Then be one?" Luffy blinked, stunned. "Huh? But," Garp continued, his voice dropping into that terrifying Marine growl, I'm gonna make sure you're the kind of pirate the world remembers. You hear me? I'll train you myself. Both Luffy and Rox froze at once. Wait, what? Rox barked from inside, caught completely off guard. You training us, old man? You've lost your marbles. Even Luffy's jaw dropped. You mean, you're not gonna try to stop me? Garp grinned. That big, toothy, terrifying grin that had once sent whole fleets running. Stop you? No, brat. I've accepted that talking sense into AD is impossible. So instead, I'll make sure when you go rogue, you're strong enough to survive the storm you'll cause. For a second, neither boy nor ghost knew what to say. Then Rox muttered, "Huh, maybe the world really is ending." Garp rubbed the back of his neck and sighed. I've got 2 months of vacation left. I'll use every damn David to train you into something that won't die the first time it meets a Yonko. But you two gotta do something for me first. Luffy straightened up, serious. What is it, Gramps? When I'm away, Garp said, you're gonna live with the mountain bandits. I left Ace in their care. Garp took a breath. Let's just say the kid's a little violent. Not the social type. I need you to keep him out of trouble. Luffy grinned. Okay. Sounds fun. Inside, Rox groaned so loud Luffy almost flinched. Oh, great. Babysitting Roger's brat. That's poetic punishment if I ever saw one. Luffy laughed. Hey, Grandpa Rox says it's gonna be fun. Fun? Garp barked a laugh. Boy, you won't even have time to breathe? He pointed toward the forest, his grin widening to something that could curdle milk. Get ready, Luffy. These next 2 months will be hell on earth. Luffy blinked nervously. Gentle training, right? Garp cracked his knuckles, the sound echoing like gunfire. Gentle? I'm not gonna be gentle like that red-haired fool. Or that ghost in your skull. I'm gonna turn you into iron. Rox muttered grimly, oh, this is gonna hurt. The moment Garp lunged, Luffy screamed as the training began. The kind that shook trees, cracked rocks, and sent Makino running to hide the liquor before Garp tried to hydrate with it again. By the time the sun set, half the beach was cratered, the trees were scorched, and Luffy was face down in the sand with steam rising from his hat. Garp stood over him proudly. Good start, only 59 more days of hell to go. Rox groaned. 59, you sadistic lunatic. Luffy, still face down, mumbled into the dirt. I'm gonna die. Garp grinned, hands on his hips. Not before you make me proud, brat. Night fell heavy over Fuchsia's forest. The stars stretched endlessly across the sky, their reflection flickering faintly on the waves. In a clearing not far from the beach, the once proud Monkey D. Luffy lay face down in the dirt, twitching. His hat sat crooked over his head, and the faint shape of Garp's fist still pulsed like a mountain imprint on his back. A few feet away, Garp snored like an artillery cannon, flat on his back, cape tossed over a log, mumbling in his sleep about justice and training brats till they cry. Luffy groaned weakly. Ow, inside, Rock's voice rumbled like an old ship creaking in calm waters. Told you he was a fruitcake. Luffy rolled onto his back, wincing. Yeah, Gramps really loves beating me. Rox chuckled darkly. He calls it love. I call it attempted murder. Despite the pain, Luffy laughed, a small, tired sound that carried through the night. Hey. Guess that's just how he shows he cares. For a moment, both were quiet. The only sound was the ocean and Garp's thunderous snores echoing through the trees. Then Rock's tone softened, shifting from gruff to almost mentoring. Listen, kid. When your old man leaves again, and when we're done babysitting Roger's brat, I'm taking over your training. Luffy blinked, sitting up slowly. Huh? More training? Aye, Rox said. The kind that makes you a real pirate. You've got fists and guts, but you need more than that. A captain's gotta have sea legs, know his bearings, and understand the world he's gonna conquer. Luffy tilted his head, curious. You mean like, navigation stuff? Exactly, Rox said, his voice firm but proud. How to read the stars, how to feel the current, how to guide a ship through hell itself. When you finally set sail, you'll be ready, and who knows? The ghost's tone grew faintly amused. We might even find some able souls worth recruiting for your crew. Pirates like no other. Luffy's eyes lit up. Exhaustion forgotten. Yeah. A crew, people who'll sail with me and chase the sea. That's the spirit, lad, Rox said with a faint laugh. We'll make sailors, warriors, and lunatics out of the lot. Luffy grinned, staring up at the sky. Thanks, Grandpa Rox. There was a pause. Then, quietly, Rox answered, You're welcome, brat. The forest grew still again. Fireflies drifted lazily above the grass. Garp rolled over and muttered something about paperwork and marine taxes, earning a muffled laugh from both boy and ghost. Luffy yawned and closed his eyes, hat tipping over his face. Tomorrow's gonna hurt again, huh? Aye, Rox said, his voice fading like the tide. But pain builds kings. Now sleep, Monkey D. Luffy. The seas are waiting. Luffy's breathing steadied, his small frame relaxing into the earth. Above him, the stars burned brighter, as if the heavens themselves were watching the birth of a new era. The path to Mount Kalubo rattled under the force of Vice Admiral Garp's boots. Birds scattered. Wild boars ran for their lives. Even the trees seemed to lean away as he marched uphill with a grinning 7-year-old hanging over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Gramps, Luffy complained, bouncing with each step, you don't gotta carry me like this. Quiet, brat. Garp barked proudly. This is the fastest delivery method, Marines call it the Grandson Express. That's not real, it is now, Rox snorted inside Luffy's mind. Fruitcake. They reached a shabby wooden shack tucked deep in the forest. Smoke puffed from the chimney. Loud arguing came from inside. Perfect. Garp didn't bother knocking. He kicked the door open so hard it nearly flew off the hinges. Dayton. I'm back. A scream followed immediately. Stop kicking my door, you old gorilla. A mountain of a woman spun around, hair frizzed like an angry lion, cigar dangling, bandits hiding behind her legs. Dayton's face froze when she saw Garp, and then dropped even lower when she saw the little boy dangling from his shoulder. No, she said flatly. Absolutely not. I already got one demon child. I'm not taking another. Garp ignored her completely and plopped Luffy onto the floorboards with a loud thud. Dayton. Meet my grandson, he'll be staying with you. Dayton's eye twitched so violently it nearly detached. I'm a mountain bandit, not a kindergarten teacher. Luffy blinked at her, then tilted his head. Wait, you're a woman? Silence. The bandits stiffened. Dayton slowly lowered her cigar. You. Little. Brat. Luffy frowned innocently. Sorry, you just kinda look like a man. You take that back, she lunged, but Garp casually held her back with one pinky finger. Ha ha ha. That's my grandson, sharp eyes and no manners, just like me. Dayton fought against his finger like a rabid boar. I can't watch another kid, Ace is already a menace. Garp's grin widened. Dayton, it's either take care of Luffy. He cracked his knuckles, or spend the rest of your life in prison. The bandits paled. Dayton clenched her teeth so hard her cigar snapped in half. Instant mood change. Ha ha ha. What I meant was, welcome, sweet little Luffy. Make yourself at home, she said with a face that screamed inner suffering. Luffy blinked. Your smile looks broken. Shut up. Garp squatted beside Luffy and lowered his voice. Now listen, brat. Don't be too hard on Ace, alright? Why? He's rowdy. And you already know hockey, and sword stuff, and gear second. Garp muttered the last part like it physically hurt him. Just don't beat him to a pulp on the first day. Luffy nodded brightly. Okay, Gramps. Rox snorted. No promises. Garp stood up, dusted his hands, and pointed dramatically toward the sea. Well then, I'm leaving this kid to you. Wait. No, hey, Gar. Too late. Garp was already walking away, whistling happily as Dayton screamed behind him. He turned once, cupping his hands around his mouth. Luffy. Don't cause too much chaos. I won't. You will, Dayton yelled simultaneously. And Dayton, Garp added with a terrifying smile, remember, if he comes back injured, prison. Dayton's soul visibly left her body. Garp vanished into the forest, laughing like a madman. Luffy looked up at Dayton expectantly. So, when do I meet Ace? Dayton groaned loudly. Dear gods, this kid is gonna kill me. It didn't take long for Ace to show himself. Luffy had barely stepped out of Dayton's shack when a presence flared from the tree line. Wild, angry, burning like a spark eating dry wood. Luffy didn't even need Rock's whisper to recognize it. This was the rowdy kid Garp warned him about. Ace landed on a branch above them, pipe slung over his shoulder, eyes sharp and hostile. Dayton groaned. "Oh great, here we go." Rocks hummed inside Luffy's chest. "Well, I'll be damned, spit and anger." The spitting image of Roger when he was young. Luffy blinked up at Ace with his usual disarming grin. "Hi. I'm Luffy. Wanna be friends?" Ace stared at him for a long moment, then leaned forward and spat directly in Luffy's face. A thick glob hit Luffy's cheek and slid down slowly. The bandits gasped. Dayton slapped her forehead. Rocks muttered in disgust, disgusting. I'd have tossed him overboard." Ace smirked, stepping off the branch and dropping to the ground with a cocky swagger. "What are you gonna do about that, you little shrimp?" Luffy stood perfectly still, silent, expressionless. The air shifted, barely, but enough that Sabo, hidden behind a tree, felt a chill climb his spine. Ace opened his mouth to mock him again. Bam! Luffy moved faster than any kid had a right to. His fist smashed square into Ace's jaw with a crack that echoed across the forest. Ace spun in the air twice before hitting the ground so hard dust shot upward. A single tooth bounced across the dirt. For a moment Ace didn't move. Then he curled in on himself, trembling, biting his lip hard to stop the tears. Sabo peeked from the bushes, wide-eyed. The bandits froze. Dayton whispered, "Sweet mother of..." Luffy wiped Ace's spit off his cheek with calm, steady fingers. Then he crouched beside the furious, humiliated boy shaking on the ground. "You should be more polite, Ace," Luffy said softly. "Not everybody is your enemy." Ace snarled through gritted teeth, face red from pain and pride. Shut up." But Luffy wasn't angry anymore. He wasn't even smug. He looked at Ace with something far worse. Understanding. "You're trying real hard not to cry," Luffy said matter-of-factly. "But you don't gotta. Crying doesn't make you weak." Ace's face crumpled in fury. "I said shut up." Luffy stood, dusting off his shorts. "I'm gonna get meat." Dayton blinked. What? You're just leaving?" Luffy waved happily as he walked into the forest. "Yeah, I'm hungry." "Oh, and Miss Dayton?" "What? You might want to get the crybaby there an ice pack." Ace exploded. "I'm not a crybaby." His voice cracked, and the tears he'd been holding back finally fell, sealing Luffy's point. Rocks chuckled deeply inside Luffy's mind as the boy disappeared into the jungle. "Ha! Nice punch, brat. Roger's kid needed that." Back at the clearing, Dayton knelt beside Ace, who was clutching his jaw with pure hate in his eyes, shaking with humiliation. He punched me," Ace whispered, stunned. "No kidding," Dayton muttered, handing him a cloth. "You started it." Ace glared at the direction Luffy ran. "I'm gonna kill him." Sabo finally stepped out from hiding, looking torn between shock and admiration. "No, you're not," he said quietly. Ace snapped. "Why not?" Sabo swallowed hard. "Because I don't think you can." Ace froze. And deep in the trees, Luffy hummed happily as he hunted for meat, completely unfazed by the storm he had just created. The boar snorted and pawed at the dirt, unaware that its death was approaching. Luffy crouched low in the bushes, breathing slow and steady. His eyes narrowed, a little spark of focus lighting inside them. Sweat dripped down his temple as he decided how he wanted to strike. Rocks muttered inside him, amused. "So, boy, how you gonna do this? With the sword, or the devil fruit?" Luffy whispered back, maybe." Snap. A twig cracked behind him. Luffy rolled his eyes. Too loud. Two figures burst from the bushes, Ace and Sabo, both with pipes raised above their heads like executioners. "Got you," Ace roared. "Hiya," Sabo yelled right behind him. Luffy didn't even flinch. He simply lifted both hands and caught their pipes mid-swing, fingers clamped tight around the metal. Ace and Sabo froze, mid-air, suspended like dolls. Luffy smiled. Then he swung both their pipes downward and flung the two boys straight into a nearby tree. The trunk rattled. Leaves fell. Both boys slid down the bark and hit the ground with twin groans. Gonna have to do better, Luffy said cheerfully. Ace staggered up, rubbing his head. Sabo. You. Ow. Get up. He's. Shing. A metallic whisper sliced through the forest. Ace's eyes widened as cold steel touched his throat. Luffy stood over him, calm as a summer breeze, holding his sword with perfect control. Ace stammered, wait, what? I thought that was a toy. Luffy tilted his head, smiling. Nope, real and sharp. Sabo scrambled up with a yelp, clutching his own head. Ace, I told you this was a bad idea. Ow, my head. Luffy stepped back and sheathed the sword with a click. Then he pointed it at the blonde boy curiously. So, who are you? Sabo brushed dirt off his clothes and stood tall, trying to look proper despite the branch stuck in his hair. I'm Sabo. Ace's friend. Sorry about attacking you. Luffy grinned wide. I like you already. Sabo blinked, surprised. Thanks. Meanwhile, Ace was pushing himself to his feet, cheeks red with humiliation and fury. Luffy turned to him, expression softening. Ace, he said calmly, I'm not your enemy. Ace scoffed. You punched me. You spat on me. That doesn't count. Luffy shrugged. You're angry. All the time. Ace blinked, thrown off. So what? You don't know anything about me. Luffy smiled faintly. Yeah, I do. Ace froze. Let me guess, Ace growled. Gramps told you. Yup. Ace waited for the insults. The judgment. The fear. He waited for Luffy to say Roger's son like it was poison. Instead, Luffy lightly poked his forehead. I don't care. Ace's breath caught. You don't care? Nope, Luffy said simply. In my eyes, you're just a kid who needs a hug. Sabo choked so hard he nearly fell over laughing. Ace's face went beet red. Sabo, stop laughing. Sabo held his stomach. I see, can't, Ace, he said. You need a hug. Ace shrieked in mortification. Luffy just scratched his cheek. I'm serious though. You act tough but you're lonely. That's not anger, it's hurt. Ace stared at him. At the boy who punched him, beat him, humiliated him, and yet somehow saw straight through him. For the first time, Ace didn't know what to say. Luffy stepped past them toward the boar he'd been hunting. You two coming? He asked casually. Meat tastes better when you eat it with friends. Ace and Sabo exchanged a look, confused, irritated, and curious. And maybe, just maybe, something like respect began to grow. Days passed on Mount Kalubo like drifting embers, slow at first, then burning hotter every sunrise. Luffy, Ace, and Sabo hunted together, fought together, ate together, bickered together. They were not quite brothers yet, but the ground between them was beginning to grow roots. They stole food from the village. They stole tools from any careless traveler. And sometimes, when they were feeling bold, they stole from Bluejam, the pirate who squatted near the gray terminal like a rotting tick. Rocks snorted every time his name came up. Bluejam, that idiot isn't fit to call himself a pirate. I've seen sea kings with more dignity. Luffy laughed whenever Rocks said that, though Ace and Sabo never understood why. But one night, while Ace and Sabo slept in the cramped treehouse they now shared, Rock's voice shifted. Not amused, not mocking, not roaring with ancient pride. But, soft. Lad, you awake? Luffy opened his eyes slowly. The moon cast pale silver through the branches. Grandpa Rocks. What's wrong? He whispered. The ghost hesitated, something he had never done before. My time is almost done. Luffy sat up so fast he nearly fell out of the hammock. What? What do you mean? You're not dying. You're a ghost. You can't die again. A faint, tired chuckle echoed in his mind. I'm not dying, boy. I'm merging. Luffy blinked. Huh? Rocks sighed. The type of sigh that carried 40 years of war, regret, pride, and sorrow. Remember when our souls merged in that field? That merge wasn't complete. Not yet. He paused, letting the weight settle. In 2 years, our souls will combine fully. Permanently. I won't be a voice in your head anymore. I'll be you. Luffy's chest tightened painfully. So, you'll disappear? No, I'll live inside you. As part of you. But this, me. The one you're talking to now, will fade. Luffy gripped his blanket so hard it stretched. That's sad, he whispered. Rox murmured. I've enjoyed teaching you. Laughing with you. Watching you grow. But we don't have much time left, and there's something we must do before I vanish. Luffy swallowed hard. What is it? Rock's tone turned sharp, serious, almost lethal. You must eat a second devil fruit. Luffy froze. What? That kills people, everyone knows that. Everyone except us. Rock's voice echoed like a storm on open water. Since we share one body, I believe, no, I know, that you will survive. You are no normal boy, Luffy. You carry Nika's fire and my shadow. And to keep both alive, you need balance. Luffy shivered. Balance, with what? Rox answered with a calm so absolute it felt ancient. The yami yami no mi. Luffy's eyes widened. The fruit of darkness. Rock's voice rumbled with old fury. Nika is the sun, a god of freedom, light, and chaos. But too much light blinds, too much fire burns. He paused. The yami yami no mi, the moon god's fruit, devours everything, light, gravity, hope, pain. It is darkness incarnate. Luffy hugged his knees, trembling. So if I eat them both, I'll control light and darkness? Yes. You will become balance. A force no god, no celestial dragon, no monster can ever chain. Luffy hesitated. Where do we find it? For the first time in days, Rox chuckled darkly. That, lad, is why we must go now. Before I vanish. Before the world realizes what you are. Luffy's heartbeat thundered in his ears. Ace and Sabo snored softly beside him, unaware of the storm forming. Rox whispered one last thing, gentler than ever before. You're destined for more than pirates and kings, you're destined for the world. Luffy closed his eyes. I'll eat it, he whispered. For you. For Ace. For Sabo. For our future. Rock's voice trembled, proud and ancient. Good lad. Luffy lay back down in the hammock, heart still thumping from Rock's heavy revelation. He didn't notice the rustling behind him, not until a voice whispered. Who are you talking to, Luffy? Luffy flinched so hard he almost rolled out of the hammock. Ace stood in the doorway, pipe hanging loosely in his hand, hair sticking up from sleep. His eyes narrowed, suspicious. A second voice yawned from behind him. What's going on? Sabo mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Luffy froze. Oh shit. The jig was up. Both boys stared at him. Luffy realized he had two options, lie, or tell them the truth. He chose the Luffy option. Okay, he sighed, I'll tell you everything. Ace crossed his arms. This had better be good. Sabo stepped forward slowly, almost nervously. Luffy reveals the truth. Luffy took a deep breath. 6 months ago, in the forest, I met a ghost. A pirate, my grandpa. Ace blinked. You're what? Luffy pointed to his chest. He's in here. His soul merged with mine. His name is Rox D. Xebec. Ace's brows crashed together in total confusion. Rox who? Never heard of. But Sabo went pale. Deathly pale. He trembled as he stepped backward. I've read that name, he whispered. In a forbidden history book. The Red Book of the Void Century. Ace stared at him. Huh? Sabo swallowed. Rox D. Xebec was the most dangerous man in the world. A monster. A tyrant. A demon who wanted to destroy the world nobles. Luffy nodded calmly. Yeah. That's him. Ace choked. You have a demon pirate in your head? Rox snorted in Luffy's mind. Rude. Sabo stared at Luffy like he was seeing a ghost himself. And you said he's your grandfather? Luffy shrugged. Yup. My mom was his daughter. Both Ace and Sabo just stared. The forest went dead silent. Even the bugs seemed to stop buzzing. Luffy drops the bomb about Ace's father. After a long pause, Ace finally croaked. So this Rox guy told you stuff? About me? Luffy nodded. Yeah. Grandpa Rox told me something about your dad. Ace froze. My dad? His voice cracked. Sabo whispered, Ace, be careful. Luffy sat up straighter, expression sincere. He told me why your dad surrendered. Ace's breath hitched. Let me guess, he spat bitterly. He said my dad was a coward, right? A monster? A criminal? Luffy shook his head. No, none of that. Ace blinked, confused. Luffy continued softly. Your dad wasn't a coward, he was dying. Ace's fists clenched. What? Luffy nodded somberly. He became Pirate King already sick. He had, maybe a year left. He knew he didn't have time. Ace stared, shaking. He wanted to meet you, but he was scared his illness would kill him before he could. Ace's breath came in shaky gasps. Luffy swallowed hard. So he turned himself in. He told Gramps, Garp, about you. He asked him to find you, protect you. Sabo's eyes filled with tears. Ace's shoulders trembled violently. He didn't run, Ace, Luffy said gently. He didn't give up. He didn't fear death. He already accepted it. Luffy put a hand over his heart. He surrendered because he wanted you to live. Ace's lip quivered. Yo, you're lying, I'm not. Ace bit his lip so hard it bled. Why? Why would he do that? Why would he care? Luffy smiled sadly. Because you're his son. And even dying, he wanted the world to have a future with you in it. Ace collapsed to his knees. Sabo knelt beside him, hugging him tightly. Luffy stayed quiet, giving Ace the space to break. And behind his heartbeat, Rox whispered softly. Roger, even in death, you stubborn fool. Next morning Blue Jam's camp always stank. Rotting wood, spilled rum, cheap tobacco, and the kind of sweat that clung to men who had no conscience left. Ace hated it. Sabo despised it. And Luffy didn't like how the man's aura felt. Dark. Cruel. Greedy. Rox whispered inside him the first time they saw Blue Jam up close. Remember this scent, lad. It's the scent of a false pirate. Someone who takes but never gives. Someone who sells souls for coin. Luffy understood. He always listened when Rox used that tone. But today, everything went wrong. The trap Ace, Sabo, and Luffy had gone to sneak food from Blue Jam's crates again. It was routine. They'd done it dozens of times. But this time, Blue Jam was waiting. Well, look who we have here. The pirate rose from behind a stack of barrels like a shadow. Two men flanked him, blades drawn. Ace stepped in front instantly, snarling, back off. Sabo raised his pipe beside him. Luffy simply narrowed his eyes. Blue Jam grinned with yellow teeth. Brave little rats. Stealing from me again, huh? Ace shouted, we're not scared of you. Blue Jam moved faster than any of them expected. His fist slammed into Ace's stomach, knocking the wind right out of him. Ace crashed into the dirt, gasping, coughing, tears welling despite himself. Ace! Sabo screamed. Blue Jam grabbed Sabo by the shirt and threw him against a crate. Wood splintered. Sabo collapsed, dazed. Luffy's breath went cold. A dark hum rose in his chest. Rox growled, lad, careful. Blue Jam turned toward Luffy, cracking his knuckles. And you, little brat, you look like you fetch a good price. He lunged. But Luffy didn't move, he didn't even blink. His aura changed, suddenly, violently, like a beast waking up. Luffy snaps. Blue Jam's punch flew toward him. Luffy caught it between two fingers. 2 fingers. Blue Jam froze, eyes bulging. What? Luffy tilted his head, voice dead quiet. You hurt my brothers. A shiver ran through every man present. Luffy squeezed. Bones cracked. Blue Jam screamed, dropping to his knees. Ace stared from the dirt, stunned. Sabo watched with wide, trembling eyes. Luffy released Blue Jam's fist, just long enough to grab him by the face. Then he slammed him into the ground so hard the earth shook. Rox whistled. Not bad, brat. The other bandits rushed him. Get the kid. But they didn't get far. Luffy's conqueror's hockey pulsed, small, controlled, but heavy enough to knock the 2 pirates flat. Blue Jam tried crawling away, blood dripping from his nose. Luffy walked toward him, step by step, shadow swallowing the firelight. You hurt Ace, he repeated. You hurt Sabo. I don't forgive that. Ace gulped. Sabo whispered, Luffy. Luffy grabbed Blue Jam's shirt and yanked him upright. You call yourself a pirate? You're trash. Pirates protect their nakama. People like you burn innocent towns just for money. Blue Jam's eyes widened, because Luffy shouldn't know that. But he did. Rocks murmured inside him. Good, now you see what he truly is. Luffy drew his fist back. Don't ever touch my brothers again. His punch hit Blue Jam square in the jaw, sending him flying through a stack of crates, wood exploding everywhere. Blue Jam lay unmoving, groaning, broken. Luffy turned, chest heaving. Ace. Sabo. He kneeled beside them, helping Ace sit up. Ace's breath trembled, but he tried to hide the pain. Sabo winced as he stood. You two okay? Luffy asked, voice returning to normal. Ace stared at him, not with anger, not with pride, but with something new. Respect. Why yeah, Ace muttered. Thanks. Sabo nodded shakily. You saved us. Luffy smiled. Of course. You're my friends. Ace looked down, hiding a small, reluctant grin. Sabo wiped his eyes. And behind them, Blue Jam groaned on the ground, defeated but not gone. Not yet. His true betrayal was still coming. The fire crackled gently in the center of the treehouse, casting warm orange light over the three boys. Ace was chewing on cooked boar meat, still rubbing the bruised Blue Jam left on his ribs. Luffy was tearing into his share with wild enthusiasm. Sabo, sitting a bit apart, poked his food without eating. Ace noticed first. What's wrong with you? He grumbled, mouth full. Meat too fancy for a noble? Sabo flinched like the word slapped him. Luffy blinked. Noble? Oh yeah, you said that before. Sabo's shoulders tightened. He stared down at his knees. I should tell you, he whispered. Luffy and Ace looked at him, confused. Sabo took a shaky breath. My real name is Sabo of the Outlook family, one of the richest noble families in Goa. Ace spat out his meat. You what? Luffy snorted. Knew it. Your hair was too neat. Ace elbowed him. Not helping. Sabo hugged his knees closer, shame burning on his face. My parents, they didn't love me. They didn't even like me. I was just, he swallowed hard. A tool. Something to display at parties. Something they could marry off for money. Ace frowned, anger rising on his behalf. Sabo continued quietly. I hated it. Every day. I saw how the nobles treated commoners, like insects. Like trash. When I found the Red Book in my father's library, I realized the truth. Nobles have always been tyrants. Evil. Cruel. So one night, I escaped. He wiped his eyes and laughed bitterly, but I guess it doesn't matter. I'm a noble's son, no matter what I do. Silence settled. Luffy and Ace looked at each other. Then Ace shrugged. So what? Sabo blinked, stunned. What? Ace crossed his arms. Yeah, so what? You ran away. That's all that matters. You didn't want to be one of them. Luffy nodded with a mouthful of meat. Yep. You smell like freedom, not like those stuck-up jerks. Sabo stared at them in disbelief. You're not angry, or scared, or disgusted. Luffy tilted his head. Why would we be? Ace grinned sharply. If anything, I'm glad you escaped. Those nobles are monsters. Sabo's lips trembled. But I lied to you, about who I am. And, Ace said bluntly, we're pirates, we lie all the time. Luffy nodded. Besides, you didn't lie, you just didn't tell us everything yet. Ace smacked Luffy's shoulder. Yeah, exactly what he said. Sabo's eyes began to water. You guys, you're serious? Luffy scooted closer and flicked Sabo's forehead lightly. Friends don't care where you came from, only who you are now. Ace grunted. Yeah. And who you are now, is someone who eats my meat and steals my blankets and snores too loud. That's what matters. Sabo laughed. Really laughed, bright and honest and relieved. I'm really glad I met you too. Luffy beamed. Good, now eat, meat gets cold. Sabo reached for the food, hands still shaking from everything he'd said. But now, when he looked at Ace and Luffy, the fear was gone. Replaced by belonging. By warmth. By something that had been missing from his life since the day he was born. Family. Rocks murmured inside Luffy's mind, unusually gentle. You chose well, lad, these boys, they're worth fighting for. Luffy smiled faintly. Yeah. They were. The night wrapped around Mount Kalubo like a warm blanket. Fireflies drifted between the trees, glowing softly while the crackling fire in the treehouse lit the boys' faces with flickering gold. Ace tore another chunk of meat from the roasted boar, finally relaxed after the chaos of the day. Sabo sat beside him, posture straighter than usual, smiling without that nervous edge. Luffy was humming happily while licking grease off his fingers. For the first time since they met, the space didn't feel tense. Didn't feel dangerous, didn't feel like a battle waiting to happen. It felt right. Ace leaned back with a sigh. Today sucked, but the food doesn't. Sabo laughed softly. It was scary, but we handled it. Luffy nodded proudly. Because we're awesome. Ace rolled his eyes. You mean because you punched Blue Jam through a box, idiot? Luffy shrugged. He deserved it. Ace grinned wide. Yeah, he did. Sabo poked the fire with a stick. You know, we make a good team. The words hung in the air. Luffy froze mid-bite. Ace lowered his pipe. Sabo blinked, suddenly unsure if he'd said something too bold. But Luffy smiled. A team, he echoed. I like that. Ace smirked, leaning forward. A team of what? Brats? Thieves? Forest goblins? Sabo pouted. I am not a goblin. Luffy giggled. Ace is. Hey. They all burst out laughing. When the laughter died down, Luffy suddenly stood up, careful not to hit his head on the ceiling beams. Hang on, he said. He rummaged through an old crate they'd stolen from the village until he found what he was looking for. 3 small cups. Cracked, dirty, and mismatched, but cups nonetheless. Ace raised an eyebrow. The hell are those? Luffy held them proudly. Sake cups. Sabo blinked. Luffy, we're kids. Yeah, Ace added. We can't drink sake. Luffy shrugged. This is a special occasion. Rocks chuckled deep inside his chest. Hey. He knows the tradition well. Luffy placed the 3 cups in a row on the wooden floor. I heard that pirates become brothers by sharing drinks. Ace stared. Sabo swallowed. Luffy poured sake into each cup, splashing a little but smiling brightly. He picked up his cup and held it out. I want to be brothers with you. Ace stiffened. Sabo's eyes widened. Luffy continued, voice steady, for once without any childish tone. You're my friends. And, I don't have a family. Not really, but when I'm with you too, it feels like I do. Ace froze. Breath caught in his throat. Sabo's eyes watered instantly. Luffy extended his cup further. I don't care where you're from. Or who your parents are. Or what you did. I just want you as my brothers. Silence. Long, heavy silence. Then, Ace grabbed his cup. But he didn't look at Luffy. He stared at the ground, cheeks red, voice low. Fine. But only because you're annoying. Sabo grabbed his too, smiling through tears. I'd be honored. Luffy grinned so wide his eyes nearly closed. The 3 boys clinked their cups together. And drank. The moment tasted like sake, but felt like a promise. A vow stronger than blood. A bond that would shake the world. Ace wiped his mouth. From now on, anyone who hurts you, hurts me too. Sabo nodded. And I'll protect you both. Luffy smiled gently. And I'll always come back to you. Rocks whispered with a hint of awe. 3 storms, the world has no idea what's coming. Under the stars of Dawn Island, 3 boys became brothers. Luffy. Ace. Sabo. 2 weeks later the sun crept over Dawn Island in a soft orange glow, warming the treetops and sparkling across the ocean. It should have been a peaceful morning. A new beginning. For Sabo, it was supposed to be his beginning. He tightened the rope on his small homemade boat, glancing back at the forest one last time. The wind caught his blonde hair, brushing it gently like a mother's final farewell. Luffy and Ace stood on the cliff above him, watching proudly. Ace grinned. You did it, Sabo. A real pirate ship. Luffy waved excitedly. Send us a letter when you find treasure, and bring back meat. Sabo laughed, heart warm. I will, and when I make a name for myself, I'll come back and get you both, I promise. Ace wiped his nose on his arm and crossed his arms. You'd better. You're our brother. Don't forget that. I won't. Luffy cupped his hands around his mouth. Hurry before Dayton wakes up. Sabo jumped into his boat, still smiling. His heart beat with freedom. the kind he had dreamed of since he was 5. He untied the rope, pushed away from the dock, and began rowing out into the open sea. The ocean breeze smelled sweeter than he ever imagined. "I'm free," he whispered, eyes shining, finally free. For a moment, the world felt perfect. Then Ace's smile vanished. Luffy's grin froze. A shadow fell across the water. A massive noble ship, white and gold, with cannons lining its side and a giant hoof-shaped crest on its sails, drifted into view. A celestial dragon's ship. Ace's blood went cold. No, 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 no. Luffy felt something tear inside his chest. The noble on deck, a bloated man wearing a bubble helmet, pointed lazily at Sabo's tiny boat. "What's that?" "A commoner child, my lord," a soldier answered. The celestial dragon clicked his tongue. "TCH. I don't like seeing trash near my vessel." Ace's voice broke. "Sabo, turn back now." Sabo froze, heart pounding. He started rowing frantically, trying to escape. The celestial dragon raised a rifle. Trash should know its place. Time slowed. Ace screamed until his throat ripped. Luffy's heartbeat thundered like war drums. Sabo looked up at the cliff, at his brothers, and smiled softly. A peaceful smile. Bang! The sound echoed across the sea like a funeral bell. Sabo fell to the side, blood spreading across his white shirt. His hat flew off. His body slumped over the boat and slid into the water. "Achi," his voice whispered faintly, then vanished beneath the waves. Silence. The celestial dragon chuckled. HMPH, annoying. Then turned his back as if he had swatted a fly. Ace collapsed onto his knees, shaking violently. "No, Sabo, Sabu." Luffy didn't scream. He didn't cry. He didn't breathe. He just stared. The world around him blurred. The colors drained. His ears rang until all he heard was his own heartbeat. Boom. 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 Ace crawled toward Luffy. Luffy, say something, please, say something." But Luffy didn't move. Inside him, rocks whispered, horrified. "Lad, don't let it out, not this time," but the dam was breaking. The sun god inside him roared. The storm of darkness rose. The moment Sabo died, a part of Luffy's soul shattered irreversibly. The next scene would unleash something the world had never seen. Ace wasn't breathing. He couldn't. All he could do was stare at the rippling ocean where Sabo vanished. "Bo," he choked out, tears streaming as saltwater swallowed their brother whole. But Luffy didn't cry. He didn't scream. He stood up slowly, eyes shadowed, hair hiding his face. The air around him felt wrong. Too still, too heavy, too cold. Rocks whispered inside him, voice uneasy for the first time. "Lad, don't draw the blade, you're not thinking straight." Luffy didn't listen. He reached for his sword, shing. The metal rang like death being born. Gear second steam began hissing off his skin without him activating it consciously, his body igniting on its own in response to pure rage. His veins glowed faint pink. His pupils shrank to razor slits. Ace backed up, terrified. Luffy, what are you doing?" Luffy spoke in a voice calm and dead. "I'm going to kill them." He vanished. One instant he was beside Ace. The next he was standing on the celestial dragon ship. The Marines guarding it gasped. How did a child?" Luffy didn't give them time to understand. He blurred forward. Gum jet slash. A hybrid move. Sword coated in armament, body in gear second. The first Marine split in half before he even realized he was dead. The second tried to raise his rifle. Gum jet pistol. His head snapped back, neck broken instantly. The third reached for a Den Mushi. Luffy's blade flashed. Slice. The snail, the man, and the table behind them split into neat, clean thirds. Blood sprayed across the pristine white deck, staining symbols of divine power with violent red. Men screamed. The celestial dragon turned, outraged, not frightened. "What is this filth? How did a brat get on my ship?" Luffy stepped out of the smoke and bodies. He smiled. Not his usual smile. Not goofy. Not bright. A smile stretched too wide, teeth clenched too hard. A rock's smile. You killed my brother, Luffy whispered. And now I'm gonna play with you. The celestial dragon stuttered, G-guards. Guards. But there were none left. Luffy grabbed one marine still alive, slammed him face first into the deck, then kicked him off the ship. The man's scream vanished into the ocean. Another man swung a cutlass. Luffy caught the blade between his fingers, twisted, and cut the man open with his own weapon. Rocks hissed, half horrified. This isn't training, this is slaughter. Luffy walked toward the celestial dragon, sword dripping blood, steam curling from his shoulders like a demon rising from fire. The noble fell backward, trembling now. Don't touch me. I'm a god, I'm. Luffy kicked him in the stomach so hard the bubble helmet cracked. The noble wheezed and crawled backward. Luffy knelt beside him, gripping his hair and yanking his head up. You're no god, Luffy whispered. You're just trash wearing gold. He raised his sword. The celestial dragon shrieked, No, wait, stop, I'll pay you. Luffy laughed softly. I don't want money. He slammed the noble's head into the deck. The bubble shattered. The man screamed as he lost his symbol of divinity. Luffy raised the sword again. This, he said, is for Ace. He slashed, cutting the noble's shoulder open, and this. Slash. A cut across the helmet remnants, is for Sabo. Luffy pulled the noble up one more time, his face a bloody mess. And the next one, his voice dropped to a growl, is just for fun. He prepared to swing again, when Ace's scream cut through the air. Why? Stop. Luffy froze mid-swing. Rocks roared inside his skull. Boy. Enough. Luffy trembled, sword shaking, breath wild. Slowly, he lowered the blade. The celestial dragon fainted from shock, collapsing into his own blood. Luffy stood there, panting, looking less human and more like a legend born in rage. Ace reached him moments later, grabbing his arm. Luffy, what did you? Luffy didn't answer. He turned his eyes toward the sea where Sabo disappeared. I won't let them take anyone else, he whispered. I swear it. The ship deck was soaked in blood and seawater. The bodies had stopped twitching. The celestial dragon lay unconscious in a heap, whimpering softly in his own filth. Ace couldn't tear his eyes away from Luffy. The boy stood in the center of the carnage, chest rising and falling in sharp breaths, steam curling off his shoulders as Gear seconds slowly faded. His sword dripped crimson onto the deck. His face was blank, too blank. Luffy, Ace whispered shakily. Why did you? But Luffy didn't respond. He stared at the waves, watching the place where Sabo vanished. Silence pressed down like a heavy stone. Finally, Luffy spoke. Ace, I couldn't save him. Ace clenched his fists. Neither could I. Luffy shook his head sharply. No, I should have saved him. I wasn't fast enough. Ace stepped forward. Luffy, it wasn't your fault. Luffy's voice cracked with something colder than grief. It was. I should have been stronger. Rocks murmured inside him, voice dark, quiet. Lad, this pain will shape you, but don't let it break you. Luffy looked down at his trembling hands. I won't let anyone else die, not ever, not while I'm here. Ace swallowed hard. We won't. We'll get stronger together, the three of us. He stopped himself. Luffy's lips tightened. There's no three of us, he whispered. Just us now. Ace's throat closed. He hated hearing it. He hated knowing it was true. He hated how empty the world suddenly felt without Sabo's laugh. Then Luffy finally turned toward him. His eyes looked older. Harder. A little broken. Ace, I need to tell you something. Ace blinked. What? Luffy sheathed his sword slowly. I'm leaving. Ace froze. What? Not forever, Luffy said, but for a few months. Ace felt his chest tighten. Why? Luffy, we just lost Sabo. You can't. Luffy put a hand on his shoulder. It's because we lost Sabo. Ace stopped breathing. Rock's voice echoed low, steady. Tell him, lad. Luffy inhaled. Grandpa Rocks told me something important. Something I have to do before he disappears. Ace wiped his face. What does that ghost want now? Luffy looked straight into Ace's eyes. I have to eat a second devil fruit. Ace nearly choked on air. That kills people, you idiot. Not me. Luffy said softly. Me and Rocks share a body. That's why I'll survive. Ace stared in horror. And the fruit I need, Luffy continued, is the yummy yummy no mi. Ace's heartbeat faltered. The darkness fruit? Why? Because Nika is the sun, Luffy said, touching his chest. And with that fruit, I'll gain the moon. Ace didn't know what that meant, not fully, but the way Luffy said it made something ancient flicker behind his eyes. I need both, Luffy said. Light and darkness. Freedom and destruction. So I can protect you. Ace opened his mouth to argue, but Luffy shook his head. I'm not asking for permission. This is something I have to do. The wind blew across the deck, spreading the metallic scent of blood through the air. Ace lowered his gaze. You're gonna leave, to get stronger for me? Luffy smiled, soft and small. Of course, Ace. You're my brother. Ace's lips trembled. He swallowed hard, then forced a shaky grin. Fine, but you better bring me something too. Luffy tilted his head. Like what? A devil fruit, Ace said bluntly. Something cool. Luffy blinked, then laughed. Deal. They gripped forearms, a warrior's handshake. Two brothers standing on a deck soaked with blood, loss, and the remains of their shattered childhood. Behind them, dawn began to break, pale light cutting across the sea. A new era was being born. A 7-year-old boy awakened by a god, carrying a demon in his soul, and driven by the grief of losing his first brother, has officially taken his first step into legend. Sabo's death changed everything. Ace's respect has solidified. And Luffy's path is now set. A path no pirate, no marine, and no world noble is ready for. The ocean breeze was warm, the sky clear, and the tiny fishing boat creaked like it regretted every moment of being alive. Luffy leaned over a wrinkled map, eyes narrowed in pure concentration. His tongue stuck out, his brow furrowed, his brain lagged. If this squiggly line is land, then this other squiggly line is also land, and this dot is meat? Inside his mind, Rocks screamed. That dot is a compass rose, you rubber-brained pixie. Luffy jolted so hard the map flew out of his hands and slapped him in the face. He peeled it off slowly. Oh, hi, Grandpa Rocks. Rocks groaned. Why did I ever think teaching you navigation was a good idea? Luffy held up a compass triumphantly. It's okay. I got this, north is. He spun in place. North is, that way. Rocks howled. North is labeled in. Have I taught you nothing? Luffy squinted at the compass, but the N could also mean noodles. I'm going to sink this boat. Luffy ignored the threat and flopped onto his back, staring at the sky. Grandpa Rocks, I'm hungry. You ate, Rocks snapped, all the food 1 hour ago. No I didn't. Yes, you did. 3 fish, 2 loaves of bread, a sack of nuts, and a jar of pickles. Luffy blinked. Oh. Right. Rocks sighed the sigh of a man who had once commanded Kaido and Big Mom, and was now babysitting a starving rubber child. Then Luffy gasped. Hey, Grandpa. Look. He pointed so violently that the boat rocked dangerously. Rocks shrieked inside Luffy's skull as the little fishing boat nearly flipped. An island. Rocks recovered and squinted mentally at the coastline. A small island. Palm trees. Smoke rising from chimneys. Food. Rocks groaned. Fine. Fine, but behave. We can buy supplies. That boat you stole had a little money in it. Luffy's eyes sparkled. Meat, not just meat, Rocks boomed. Luffy stopped mid-celebration. Why not? Rocks took a long, slow breath. Because you could get scurvy, you idiot. Luffy froze. What's scurvy? Scurvy. A sickness sailors get when they don't eat fruit. Luffy gasped in horror. A sickness that stops me from eating meat? No, you fool. Rocks growled. Your gums bleed, your teeth fall out, and you get weak. Pirates die from it. Luffy paused. Teeth falling out sounds painful. Yes, Rocks sighed. Which is why you're going to buy limes. Or tangerines. Or any fruit with vitamin C. Luffy immediately brightened. Oh, tangerines. I like those. Good. Because if you die from scurvy, Rocks muttered, I'm haunting your corpse. Luffy nodded seriously. I'll get fruit, and meat, mostly meat. No, lad, I said, but it was too late. Luffy had already grabbed the sail rope and pulled hard. The fishing boat lurched violently toward the island, cutting across the waves like a drunk seagull. The wind kicked up, filling the sail. Rocks clung to Luffy's soul for stability. You're gonna kill us both before we even reach Logue Town. Luffy laughed into the sea breeze. Nope, I'm the best pirate fisherman captain. You are none of those things. The tiny stolen boat wobbled, creaked, and somehow held together as it approached the sandy beach of the small island. Luffy grinned wide. Let's go, Grandpa, food awaits. Rocks muttered. If this island kills me again, I'm dragging you to hell myself. And with that, the boat drifted toward Kokoyashi village, where Destiny and one orange-haired thief waited. The fishing boat scraped against the Kokoyashi shore with a gentle bump. Luffy hopped down happily, rubbing his stomach. Food, but just as he stepped onto the sand, something caught his eye. A large, heavily armored ship sat anchored near the village dock. A skull symbol with a saw-shaped nose was painted across the sail. A shark's silhouette. Hey, Grandpa Rocks, Luffy said, pointing. What's that fish symbol thingy? Rock's voice went from grumpy to full panic. Oh shit. Luffy blinked. That bad? Kid, that is the mark of Arlong the Saw. Luffy tilted his head. Who's that? Rocks answered with a growl made of old hatred. A former member of the Sun Pirates, Fisher Tiger's crew, one of the strongest fishmen crews in the world. Luffy's eyes widened. Whoa. Fish pirates? Rocks continued, baffled and angry. But what is a fishman pirate crew doing in the East Blue? This sea is too weak for them. Something's off. Something's wrong. Luffy looked toward the village. Should I go see? Yes. Run. If Arlong is here, the villagers are in danger. Luffy sprinted at full speed, feet kicking up sand as he bolted past the tangerine groves. The smell of citrus filled the air, but something else hit him at the same time. Fear. Crushing fear. As he darted past a row of trees, he froze. Ahead of him stood a group of fishmen, hulking, monstrous shapes with sharp teeth and weapons. But Luffy didn't look at them first. His eyes locked on two little girls, maybe a year or two older than him, crying and clinging to each other. One with orange hair, the other with blue. And a fishman held their mother at gunpoint. A towering, blue-skinned shark man with a saw-shaped nose. Arlong. The monster was smiling as he pushed the pistol harder against the woman's head. Since your payment is short, I'll just kill you to set an example. The girls screamed and hugged each other tighter. The gun clicked. Arlong's finger tightened on the trigger. Hey, fish brain. The shout cracked across the grove like thunder. Arlong stopped mid-pull. Everyone turned. A 7-year-old boy with a straw hat stepped forward, eyes burning with fury. The fishmen stared, confused. Who shouted that? Arlong growled. Luffy stepped closer. Me. You fish face. His voice was calm. Too calm. The fishmen laughed hysterically. A kid? Is he suicidal? Hey Arlong, looks like a snack wandered in. Arlong glared at Luffy. You want to die with her, brat? Luffy snorted. Like I'm scared of you. Arlong froze. He wasn't sure he heard that right. Luffy continued, louder. Just because you're protected by Jinbei, you think you can do whatever you want? The fishmen gasped. Some stepped back, and Arlong's eyes filled with absolute rage. Protected by Jinbei? He roared. His voice shook the air. We broke away from that government dog. We are free. We answer to no one. Rocks whispered inside Luffy's chest with a dark, delighted chuckle. Perfect. He's cut ties. No backup. Kid, this shark bastard will make a fine morning workout for you. Luffy's fists clenched. Arlong took one step toward him, teeth bared. You dare insult me, human brat? Luffy bared his teeth right back. You hurt families. You make kids cry, and you point guns at moms. He stepped between Arlong and the woman. You're the one who's gonna die here. Arlong's grin widened into something monstrous. Oh. And what's a little weakling like you gonna do about it? Luffy inhaled slowly. Rock's voice thundered through him. Show him what a D descendant can do. Luffy cracked his knuckles. I'm gonna beat you till my stomach growls again. Arlong laughed, but for the first time, there was the tiniest hint of fear in his eyes. Arlong snarled, teeth grinding like stone against stone. His eyes bulged with fury as the tiny human stood between him and the terrified family. You brat, I'll tear you apart. Luffy blinked once, unfazed. Try it, fish face. The insult cracked the air like lightning. Arlong's crew immediately rushed forward with weapons raised, saw blades, spears, tridents, hooks, all aimed at the 7-year-old. Get him! Luffy didn't even move, when the first fishman swung a massive club. Luffy stepped past him with a blur of speed and pulled his sword from its sheath. Shing! One clean slice. The fishman's weapon fell in 2 pieces. Then his armored chestplate, then he collapsed, unconscious, blood spraying. The other fishmen froze. What the? He cut him in 1 strike. He's a kid. Luffy tilted his head. If you get in my way, I'll cut you too. 2 more fishmen screamed and attacked at once. Luffy moved like a shadow. He swung his blade twice in tiny, precise arcs, almost lazy. Slice. Slice. Both fishmen dropped, their arms and weapons spinning through the air. Arlong's jaw unhinged in shock, then he roared, "You little." Luffy pointed his sword at him. Man, you and your crew are weak. The entire grove went silent. Even the wind stopped moving. Arlong's pupils shrank. Luffy smirked, tilting his head with pure disrespect. Are you sure you and these weaklings weren't deck scrubbers on Tiger's ship? Every single fishman gasped. Arlong shook with rage. How dare you compare me, to a low ranker on Fisher Tiger's crew? Rocks laughed darkly in Luffy's mind. He hit your pride, shark, and that pride is all you have. Arlong snapped. He grabbed Kiribachi, his giant saw-shaped blade, and pointed it directly at Luffy while veins bulged across his forehead. I'll kill you. No, I'll make you beg first. He charged blindly, screaming like a mad animal. Luffy's eyes lit up. Finally, he had been waiting to test this. He tightened his grip on the sword hilt and inhaled slowly. Grandpa Rocks, watch. Rocks whispered with anticipation. Focus. Don't force it. Let your will coat the blade, now. Luffy concentrated. For a moment, the entire world grew silent. Then, SHRRRRK. Black iron sheen wrapped around the blade. A thin aura of purple lightning crackled faintly around the edge. Luffy grinned. I did it. Arlong's steps thundered closer. D-I-I-E, you little. Luffy bent his knees. Gear, second. Steam erupted from his skin, lighting his whole body in a pink glow. Arlong roared, swinging Kiribachi with a killing blow. Luffy whispered. Gum gum, jet slash. The sword moved so fast it blurred into a streak of black and crimson. KRRAACK. Kiribachi split in half instantly. Arlong blinked. For half a second, he couldn't understand why he could see the sky. Then his vision tilted. His torso slid to the left. His legs fell to the right. A spray of blood arced across the tangerine grove. Arlong hit the ground in 2 pieces. Dead, cut cleanly from shoulder to hip. Silence. Even the fishmen didn't scream, they were too shocked. Luffy exhaled, steam rolling off him as Gear second faded. He sheathed his sword. Behind him, Rocks muttered. Well done, lad. A perfect kill. Luffy turned around slowly, face calm, almost innocent. He walked toward the 2 crying sisters and their trembling mother. It's okay, Luffy said softly, he won't hurt you anymore. The body of Arlong lay split in 2 on the soil, his blood soaking the roots of the tangerine grove. His men were either unconscious, wounded, or crawling away in terror. The grove was silent, until a small, orange-haired girl broke into a run. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Before Luffy could react, she flung herself at him, arms wrapping tight around his chest. Luffy turned bright red. W what? The girl buried her face in his shirt, crying in relief. Her blue-haired sister joined her, hugging him from the other side, sobbing uncontrollably. Why, you saved Belmere. You saved her mom. Thank you. Luffy froze like a deer in headlights. Inside him, Rocks cackled. Ahahaha. You getting hugged by girls already? You little monster? Luffy whispered back, flustered, shut up, Grandpa. The orange-haired girl pulled back a little, sniffing. My name is Nami, she declared through tears. What's yours? Luffy blinked, still red. I'm Luffy. Nami smiled, bright, grateful, the kind of smile that digs into someone's heart and stays there forever. Thank you, Luffy. Before he could say anything else, heavy footsteps approached. A 7-year-old boy stood calmly beside her crying daughters. Sword at his hip. Not a single scratch on him, steam still cooling on his skin. Belle Mere stared. You killed him. Luffy nodded innocently. Yup. She swallowed. With a single strike. Yup. And I saw you cover your blade with hockey. The last word came out in a whisper of awe and disbelief. How? Belle Mere said slowly, does a child know hockey? Luffy shrugged. My grandpa taught me. Belle Mere blinked. Your grandpa? Yeah, Luffy said proudly. He punched me a lot. Belle Mere stared at him like he was either insane or the strongest child she'd ever seen. What is your name, exactly? She asked cautiously. Luffy puffed out his chest. Monkey D. Luffy. Belle Mere's cigarette dropped out of her mouth. Monkey D. Luffy nodded. Yeah, my grandpa's Garp. Belle Mere's soul left her body. That name was known everywhere in the Marines, even to ex-soldiers like her. G. Garp? She croaked. The Garp? Hero of the Marines? Mountain throwing, dragon punching, lunatic training Gar. Luffy interrupted cheerfully, that's him. Belle Mere rubbed her temples. Oh gods, you've gotta be kidding me. You're his grandson? That old fruitcake? That demon in a dog cap? Luffy laughed. Yup. Rocks snorted inside him. Fruitcake? She's not wrong. Belle Mere looked at the fallen Arlong again. A fishman pirate feared across the sea. Dead from one strike, by a marine hero's grandchild. She looked at her daughters, alive because of him. She looked at Luffy, smiling softly as Nami held onto his sleeve. For a long moment, Belle Mere said nothing. Then she kneeled down, placed a hand on his shoulder, and whispered. Thank you, Luffy. Luffy blinked. For what? For saving my family. Nami tugged his hand tightly. Najiko hugged his other side. Belle Mere exhaled shakily. Come on, kid, you're coming to my house. Luffy blinked. Does your house have food? Belle Mere smirked. More than enough. Luffy grinned wide. Let's go, Rocks sighed dramatically. Oh wonderful. You've adopted a family before lunch. Belle Mere's home was small but warm, walls decorated with fishing nets, tangerine baskets, and handmade drawings clearly done by two little girls. The moment Luffy entered, he smelled food and rushed toward the kitchen like a missile. No, slow down, Belle Mere called, grabbing him by the back of his vest like he weighed nothing. I didn't say you could eat everything yet. Luffy dangled helplessly. But I'm hungry, Rocks snorted. You're always hungry. Belle Mere set him down, but she didn't smile. She kept glancing at Luffy, too often, too carefully, too nervously. Luffy blinked. Belle Mere, why do you look scared? She froze mid-step. Najiko and Nami looked at their mother, confused. Belle Mere finally sighed and motioned for the girls to go upstairs. Go on, you two. I need to talk with Luffy alone. Nami protested, but he saved you. Belle Mere forced a soft smile. I know, but go. Once the girls were gone, Belle Mere sat down across from Luffy, and her hands were shaking. Luffy frowned. What's wrong? Belle Mere looked at him carefully, then whispered. Kid, do you know anything about your parents? Inside Luffy's mind, Rocks froze mid-smirk. Why is she asking that? How much does she know? Luffy shrugged, confused. I know their names. I never met them. My mom died giving birth to me. And Dad, he tilted his head. I heard he just disappeared. Belle Mere bit her lip, guilt flashing across her face. Her voice trembled. Luffy, your father's name is Monkey D. Dragon? Luffy nodded. Yep, and your mother is Davy D. Toatoma? Luffy blinked. How did you know that? Rocks whispered darkly. Kid. Be careful. She knows something. Belle Mere inhaled sharply. She was cornered, and she knew it. Finally, she spoke. All right, smart brat. Yes, I knew your parents. Luffy nearly fell backward. What? Rock's presence sharpened inside him. She what? Belmere rubbed her forehead. They came here 10 years ago. Dragon and Toatoma. Before Najiko. Before Nami. Before I settled here permanently. Luffy's eyes widened. Really? What were they doing? Belmere leaned closer. They were scouting for possible revolutionary outposts. Dragon wanted a hidden foothold in the East Blue. Toatoma was with him. Luffy's breath caught. He had never met them, never even heard their voices. But suddenly, they felt real. Belmere continued, voice soft with old memories. Dragon wasn't like people say. He was calm, smart, a little scary sometimes, but compassionate. And your mother, Toatoma, she was a warrior. Strong, sharp-tongued. The kind of woman who could drink me under the table. Rox grunted. Figures. My daughter always had a mouth on her. Belmere chuckled sadly. They became my friends. They trusted me. Her face hardened. One night, Dragon and Toatoma asked me for a favor. They wanted me to join the Marines, not to serve them, but to give the revolutionaries inside information. Hidden reports. Confidential troop movements. Corrupt officers. Luffy's jaw dropped. You were a revolutionary spy? Belmere nodded. I joined the Marines because Dragon asked me to. I infiltrated for 2 years. Sent intel. Helped rebels escape. And when I was discharged, my mission ended. She looked up at Luffy, eyes shining with guilt. I didn't expect to ever see you. I never thought their son would walk into my village, let alone save our lives. Luffy stared at her quietly. Belmere waited for anger. Or shock. Or fear. But Luffy only smiled. Thank you. Belmere blinked. Huh? Thank you for helping them, for helping people, for not being like the bad Marines. Rox hummed approvingly. Belmere's shoulders relaxed as tears welled in her eyes. You really are their child, and something more. Luffy scratched his cheek shyly. Hee. And upstairs, Nami and Najiko listened quietly, hearing for the first time the truth about the boy who saved their family. Dinner in Belmere's house was chaos, good chaos. Luffy ate like a starving sea king, stuffing meat, rice, and tangerines into his mouth with zero concern for dignity. Belmere stared in disbelief as her entire table vanished into Luffy's stomach like a black hole. How? HOW are you not exploding? She shouted. Luffy swallowed an impossible amount of food. I'm made of rubber. Belmere stared harder. That does not answer my question. Nami and Najiko giggled from the corner, whispering about how weird but funny Luffy was. After dinner, Luffy leaned back with a satisfied sigh. Ah, food is the best. Nami smiled shyly. I'm glad you like it. Luffy looked around, then something on the wall caught his attention. Maps. Dozens of them. Charts of islands, currents, scribbles of wind patterns and notes. Neat handwriting. Precise drawings. Luffy pointed. Who drew those? Nami proudly raised her hand. I did. Luffy's eyes sparkled like treasure. Wow. You're amazing. You should join my crew when I set sail. The room froze. Nami blinked. Najiko blinked. Belmere choked on her cigarette. You what? All three yelled at once. Luffy nodded confidently. Yeah, I need a navigator, and your maps are better than the ones in my grandpa's marine base. Nami blushed so hard she nearly turned cherry red. Oh okay, she mumbled. If you really want me, then sure, I'll join. Belmere's jaw dropped. Nami, you can't just, you're 8. Nami ignored her, still looking at Luffy with stars in her eyes. But Luffy suddenly realized he had said something he shouldn't have. Yes, Grandpa Rox, I got my future navigator. Everyone stared. Rox screamed in Luffy's mind. You fool, you said that out loud. Luffy slapped both hands over his mouth. Belmere narrowed her eyes. Okay, kid, she said sharply. Talk. Luffy froze. Belmere crossed her arms. Even though I was only a sergeant in the Marines, your fruitcake gramps trained me. I know observation hockey. And there's something wrong with your aura. Najiko and Nami leaned in. Luffy sighed. You're not gonna believe me. Try me, Belmere said. So Luffy told her everything. How he met the ghost in the forest. How that ghost was Rox D. Xebec. How their souls merged. How they shared a body. How he and Rox were heading to Logatown, Sabaody, and then the New World. How he was going to find the Yami Yami no Mi. Belmere sat perfectly still, face blank. Nami and Najiko simply gaped at him. Finally, Belmere whispered. Rox D. Xebec. Luffy nodded. Belmere stared at him like she was seeing a ghost wearing a child's skin. Tootoma never told me who her father was, she muttered. She always avoided the question, she always smiled and changed the subject. She looked up at Luffy again. And now you're telling me, she was the daughter of Rox? Luffy scratched his cheek. Yep, and that makes me his grandson. Belmere slumped into her chair like she'd been shot. Oh gods, oh marines, oh everything, Nami whispered. Mama, who's Rox? Belmere hesitated. He was the strongest, most dangerous pirate before Roger. A monster. A tyrant. The world government erased him from history for a reason. Najiko stared at Luffy with huge eyes. Eh, and he's inside you? Luffy shrugged. He says hi. From inside Luffy's soul, Rox grumbled. I do not. Belmere rubbed her forehead. And you're going to the New World, at 7? Luffy nodded happily. Yup. Belmere exhaled. Your parents really did give birth to chaos. Nami looked at Luffy with awe. Najiko with fear. Belmere with dread. And Luffy with a bright grin. The storm had arrived in Kokoyashi. The news that a small boy had killed Arlong spread through Kokoyashi village like wildfire. Within minutes, villagers came running out of their houses, some crying, some cheering, all grateful. A fisherman placed a fresh basket of salted fish in Luffy's arms. A baker gave him bread still warm from the oven. Another villager handed him a jar of honey. Take it, kid. You saved our lives, come back anytime. Luffy kept bowing awkwardly. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Belmere came last, dragging a full barrel of tangerines behind her. She thumped it at Luffy's feet with a smirk, for the journey. Luffy gasped. A whole barrel? Belmere nodded. Vitamin C, you're not getting scurvy on my watch. Luffy reached for his pocket. I can pay. Belmere flicked his forehead. Put that away. You saved my family. You saved this village. This is nothing. Luffy blushed a little. Okay. Nami stepped forward, holding something behind her back. So, Luffy, she said shyly, you're really leaving? Luffy nodded. Yeah, I gotta go to the New World. And a big fruit. And a guy named Rayleigh, and possibly meat. Nami giggled. You're weird. Luffy beamed, thanks. Nami hesitated, then handed him a small folded paper. I made you this. Luffy unfolded it carefully. It was a map. Hand-drawn. Detailed. Accurate currents and wind directions. Logatown circled. A line showing the easiest path from Kokoyashi to the next islands. Luffy's mouth fell open. Wow, you're the best navigator ever. Nami's face flushed bright red. It's just a little map. She leaned forward, stood on her tiptoes, and kissed Luffy on the cheek. A tiny, soft kiss. For luck, she whispered. Luffy's face turned nuclear red. Belmere nearly choked. Najiko smirked. The villagers laughed. But inside Luffy's mind, Rox immediately burst into laughter. Biwahahaha. You found yourself a girl already, you little lady killer. Luffy froze, eyes wide. She's not my girl, Nami blinked. What? Belmere blinked. What? Luffy slapped his mouth shut. Oh no, oh no, oh no. Rox cackled harder. Young love, so pure, so innocent. Shut up. You jackass. Luffy screamed inside his head. Rox suddenly stopped laughing. What did you say, brat? Luffy stiffened. You nothing? Rox roared. That's what I thought. Luffy sweated bullets. Nami touched his arm gently. Luffy, will you come back someday? Luffy looked at her, really looked, and smiled softly. Of course. And, have your mom teach you hockey. Belmere jumped. Hey, I didn't agree to. But Nami nodded eagerly. Okay. Luffy grabbed the tangerine barrel, tied it to his tiny fishing boat, and hopped aboard. Bye, everyone, he shouted. Bye Nami, bye Nojiko, bye Belmere. The villagers waved. Nami waved the hardest, holding back tears. Belmere saluted him. Luffy waved wildly as the tide pulled him away from the shore. Once the village shrank into the distance, Rox spoke again, voice smug. You know she likes you. No she doesn't, you blushed. No I didn't, young love, stop saying that. Luffy stomped on the deck of his little boat. Shut up, Grandpa. The waves carried him onward, toward Logatown, toward Sabaody, toward Rayleigh, toward the New World, toward the Yami Yami no Mi, and toward destiny. Logatown was huge, way bigger than Dawn Island. Way louder. Way more filled with Marines than Luffy expected. He barely got 5 steps off his tiny fishing boat before he heard. Hey, you! Stop running! Luffy panicked and vaulted into a stack of crates. Rox screamed in his mind. Not the crate. You're gonna fall. Luffy fell. Hard. Right into a merchant ship's storage hold. Fruit crates. Boxed spices. Barrels of ale. Perfect hiding spot. Free travel. Luffy whispered happily. Rox sighed. 2 weeks later, Sabaody Archipelago ship horns blasted as the merchant vessel reached Grove 32 of Sabaody. The air smelled like tar, salt, and trouble. The moment the crew lowered the ramp, Luffy slipped out behind a barrel and sprinted into the glowing mangrove streets. Wooa! Luffy yelled. Trees that make bubbles. He poked one. It popped. He laughed. Rox spoke impatiently. Enough sightseeing. We've got work to do. Go to a bar called Shocky's. Luffy nodded. Okay. Finding it took a while. He got lost in Grove 30. Then Grove 38. Then somehow wound up at a coating shop. Rox screamed. The bar is not a tree. How did you get lost in 3 groves? Eventually, Luffy found a wooden sign shaped like lips and boots. Shocky's Rip-Off Bar. Rip-off? Luffy blinked. What does that mean? Rox groaned. Just go inside. Inside Shocky's bar. The bar smelled like perfume, whiskey, and quiet danger. A woman with black hair was wiping down a glass behind the counter, humming to herself. Shikayaku. Ex-pirate, former queen of Amazon Lily. Legend. She looked up when Luffy entered. A kid, scrawny. Bright-eyed. Wearing a straw hat too big for him. Welcome to Shocky's, she said with a smirk. What can I get a little guy like you? Apple juice? Orange juice? Juice, please. Luffy said happily, climbing onto a stool. Shaky chuckled. Then Luffy added casually. Oh, and I'm here for that favor you owe my grandpa. Shaky froze. Her smile dropped. Her hand tightened on the glass so hard it cracked. Sorry, kid, she said slowly, but I haven't been called by someone's grandfather in a long time. What favor are we talking about? Luffy grinned. Oh, that one, you know, the one where if he didn't attack God Valley, you'd probably be the wife of a celestial dragon by now. Splash. Shaky dropped the glass. Juice spilled. Her face turned pale. She stared at Luffy like he had just crawled out of hell itself. What, did you just say? Yep, Luffy nodded brightly. I'm Rock's grandson. Shocky's jaw fell open. Rox D. Xebec. The man the world government erased from history. The man who nearly destroyed God Valley. The man who saved her life by destroying the celestial dragon ship that tried to capture her. Shaky whispered. Impossible, Luffy continued, oblivious to her shock. And I'm also Toatoma's son. You know, the girl Rox trusted you with. Shaky stumbled backward, hitting the shelf of bottles. T. Toatoma, she whispered. The empress who succeeded me. Rox murmured in Luffy's mind, amused. Ah, so she remembers my girl. Shaky looked at Luffy. Really looked, at his eyes, his posture, his careless aura of danger and innocence mixed together. You're her son, she breathed, and his grandson. Luffy nodded. Yep. I came because Grandpa Rox said you'd help me find Rayleigh. Crash. A bottle fell off the shelf behind Shaky and shattered. She didn't even look at it, because the child sitting at her bar was not a normal child. He was a walking ghost of the old era, and she whispered, trembling. Rayleigh is going to scream when he sees you. The door to Shocky's bar creaked open. A tall, broad-shouldered man walked in, humming a familiar tune. White hair tied in a small ponytail, glasses, and the aura of someone who had seen, and survived, countless eras. Silver's Rayleigh, the Dark King. He glanced at Shacky, then at Luffy, then back to Shacky. Shacky, why are you pale? Did a celestial dragon walk in? She pointed to Luffy with shaking hands. Ray, why you need to sit down? Rayleigh laughed. A kid? Oh come now. Then he looked at Luffy again. Really looked. His face drained of color instantly. Number that aura. That presence. That, impossible familiarity. Luffy grinned and waved. Hi? Rayleigh stumbled back so hard he knocked over a stool. Shacky. Shacky. Tell me I'm hallucinating, Shacky whispered. Ray, he says he's Rock's grandson. Rayleigh turned white. Rock's, Xebec. Luffy nodded happily. Yep, Rock's chuckled inside Luffy. He looks good for an old fossil. Luffy raised a hand. Oh, Grandpa Rox wants to talk to you. Both Rayleigh and Shacky stared. Pardon? Rayleigh whispered. Luffy patted his shoulder. Just put your hand here. Rayleigh hesitated. Slowly, very slowly, he placed a hand on Luffy's shoulder. Luffy closed his eyes, and then, the air in the room shifted. A cold, ancient pressure rolled outward, not killing intent, but presence. Rayleigh's hand trembled. Shocky's breath hitched. Then Rox spoke, not through Luffy's mouth, but directly into their minds. Well now, long time no see, Ray. Rayleigh's knees nearly buckled. Rox, you're actually in the boy, Shacky whispered, gods preserve us. Rock's voice was calm, deep, unmistakably his. Shikayaku. You look the same as the day I saved your ass at God Valley. Shacky slapped her forehead. I told you never to mention that. Rayleigh swallowed. Rox, why attach yourself to a child? What is your goal? Rox answered bluntly. He is my heir. Rayleigh and Shacky gasped. Rox continued. Not teach, never teach. He was never worthy. He is a coward hiding behind Edward. Rayleigh blinked. You don't mean Whitebeard? Of course I mean him. Teach has been hiding in his shadow for years. He's no heir of mine. Shacky whispered. Then who was? Rock's voice softened, just a little. Toatoma. My daughter. Luffy's mother. Shacky covered her mouth. Rayleigh whispered. So she really was yours, my only true successor, Rox said. But fate took her. So now, the boy carries both my will and hers. Rayleigh stared at Luffy, not with fear, but with sympathy. Kid, carrying one legend is hard enough. But two, you're carrying an entire age. Luffy scratched his cheek. It's fine, I'm strong. Rox snorted. Stupidly strong, and stupidly stupid. Hey. Rayleigh smiled shakily. Then he asked, Rox, what do you want from me? Why bring the boy here? Rox spoke with rare seriousness. When I merge with him fully, I will disappear. Only my instincts and memories will remain. He'll be alone. So teach him, Rayleigh. Train him. Prepare him for the new world. Rayleigh took a deep breath. So you're fading? Yes. Shocky's eyes softened. Ray, help them. Rayleigh nodded. Of course I will. If this boy carries the last piece of your will, and Toatoma's, then I'll do everything I can. Rox chuckled faintly. Good. Now let's get moving. The yummy no mi won't find itself. Luffy pumped his fist. Yeah, let's go, Rayleigh sighed. This is going to be a nightmare. Shacky lit a cigarette. A beautiful nightmare, she corrected, and the three of them stepped out of the bar. The last survivors of the old age guiding the first child of the new. Umbra Isla rose out of the new world like a sleeping beast, jagged cliffs, black sand, and a jungle so thick it swallowed sunlight whole. The air shimmered with strange heat, but the shadows were unnaturally cold. Luffy stepped onto the shore, eyes wide. Wooa, this island is creepy. Rox snorted. It's supposed to be. If this place were cute, someone else would have taken the treasure already. Rayleigh hopped off the boat, stretching his arms. Well, Kid, this is where my part ends for now. Luffy blinked. You're not coming with me. Rayleigh smiled. Nope. The jungle will be good training. You'll learn more fighting monsters than listening to me ramble. Luffy grinned. Okay, I like fighting. Rayleigh sighed. I know. Rox added. Go on, boy. The center of the island is calling us. Luffy nodded and bolted into the jungle. Rayleigh watched him vanish into the shadows and whispered. Good luck, kid. You're carrying 2 eras on your back. Deep inside Umbra Isla, the jungle was alive with noise. Screeching birds, hissing lizards, and giant beasts that looked older than time. Luffy fought 3 gorillas, punched a dinosaur, got chased by a giant centipede, and accidentally set a bush on fire with friction. Finally, he reached the center. And saw it. A massive stone ring, cracked, ancient, covered in moon symbols and spiraling patterns of darkness and flame. Luffy stepped inside. Rox whispered. This is where the moon god's power was sealed. Look around, lad. Luffy walked toward the center platform and gasped. 2 stone chests sat side by side, one marked with flames. One marked with darkness. Luffy opened the first chest. Inside was a swirled, red and orange devil fruit pulsing like an ember. Rox hissed in awe. The flame fruit. Mera mera no mi. Luffy's eyes sparkled. Ooh, I can give this to Ace, he'll be so strong. Rox laughed loudly. Roger's brat with the flame fruit. Oh, that will be interesting, very interesting. Luffy closed the chest carefully, like it was a treasure meant for someone he loved. Then he opened the second chest. A black-purple fruit swirled with gravity-like spiral marks lay inside, radiating a pressure that made the air around Luffy tremble. Rock's voice dropped to a whisper of awe and terror. The yummy no mi. Luffy stared at it. So this is the moon god's fruit. Rox answered slowly. Eat it, boy. Become the balance. Light and darkness, sun and moon. Luffy picked it up and took a bite, then gagged immediately. Blair. This tastes even worse than the gum. Rox laughed so hard he almost disappeared. But then, Luffy's body trembled. Heat surged through him, the familiar warmth of Nika's light. But something else mixed into it, cold, crushing, infinite darkness. Gravity swirled at his feet. Shadows bent toward him. The air warped. Luffy gasped as the powers collided inside him, light and darkness, sun and void. Gr Grandpa, Rock's voice boomed. Hold on, boy. If you survive these 10 seconds, you'll be unstoppable. Luffy clenched his teeth, eyes glowing white as energy tore through him. 1 second. 2. 3. The jungle trembled. The stone ring cracked. 5 seconds. 6. 7. Luffy shouted as the dark power surged into his veins. 8. 9. Rox whispered. Come on, 10. Luffy collapsed to his knees, then slowly stood, alive. Breathing. Smiling. Rox exhaled in relief. You survived. Luffy punched the air. A burst of black gravity and white sunlight firing out at once. I got 2 powers. Rox cackled. You are now the strongest 7-year-old in history. Maybe in the world. Luffy held both fruits' empty chests proudly, one for Ace and one for me. Umbra Isla trembled beneath him. A new legend had been born. And that finishes Chapter 4 Voyage of Sun and Shadow. Luffy, age 7, has now officially eaten 2 devil fruits, unlocked darkness and light, and accidentally given himself the power level of a small natural disaster. And of course, he immediately plans something even crazier. The boat was too small for what lived inside Luffy now. It wasn't dramatic at first. No roaring darkness, no swallowing shadows. Just wait. An invisible pressure that pressed down on the planks, made the wood groan, made the waterline creep higher with every breath Luffy took. He sat near the center, knees pulled up, hands gripping the edge so hard his knuckles hurt, teeth clenched as if that alone could keep the sea from climbing into the boat. I'm trying, he said, voice tight. I am. Darkness bled from him anyway. Not smoke, not flame, but something heavier, like the world itself, was leaning toward him. The boat dipped. Water sloshed over the side. Rayleigh didn't panic. He never did. He shifted his stance smoothly, 1 foot braced, hands steady on the oars. "You're forcing it," he said, calm but sharp. "Stop trying to control it." "That doesn't make sense," Luffy snapped, panic edging his voice. Another wave spilled in. "If I don't control it, we'll sink." Inside him, something stirred. Not laughter this time, not mockery. "You are pulling," Rock's voice echoed faintly, distant but present. "Darkness does not respond to panic. It responds to certainty." "I'm not panicking," Luffy yelled. The boat sank another inch. Rayleigh moved in a blur. He stepped forward, one hand gripping Luffy's shoulder, not gently. Solid. Grounding. The pressure shifted instantly, like a weight being redistributed. "Listen to me," Rayleigh said, voice low, commanding. "You're treating it like strength. It isn't. It's gravity. You don't grab gravity. You stand inside it." Luffy's breathing was ragged. His chest hurt. Everything hurt more than it should have. Every scrape, every ache screamed at him louder than before. He swallowed hard and forced himself to breathe, slow and deep, like Rayleigh had taught him before any devil fruit, before any of this madness. The darkness receded, not gone, but quieter. The boat steadied. Water stopped spilling in. Rayleigh tossed excess gear overboard without hesitation. "We travel light," he said, as if this were just another lesson. "You live long enough to complain later." They rode the rest of the way in silence. By the time the mangroves of Sabaody rose from the mist, glowing softly in the fading light, Luffy was exhausted. His arms trembled. His head throbbed. But the boat floated normally again, bubbles drifting past like nothing had ever been wrong. Rayleigh guided them to a quiet dock, one he clearly knew well. No crowds. No eyes. Just the soft hiss of bubbles and the distant hum of the grove. As soon as they stepped onto solid ground, Luffy nearly collapsed. He caught himself on the railing, breathing hard, staring at the towering trees like he was seeing them for the first time. Rayleigh watched him carefully. "That was restraint," he said. "Barely, but it was restraint." Luffy nodded, then suddenly turned, eyes wide and desperate. "Rayleigh, wait, please." That made the old man pause. "I need you," Luffy said, words tumbling out. "Both of you. You and Shaggy. I can't do this alone. I need help. Real help, not just me." Rayleigh studied him. "Help with what?" "With training," Luffy said quickly. "Me, and Ace. Please. Come to the East Blue with us." Rayleigh's brow furrowed. "Ace?" Luffy didn't hesitate this time. "My brother." Rayleigh crossed his arms. "That doesn't answer my question." Luffy swallowed. His voice dropped, steady despite the fear twisting in his chest. "His name is Portgas d Ace. His mother was Portgas d Rouge." Rayleigh went very still. "And his father," Luffy continued, meeting his gaze, "was Gold D. Roger." The world seemed to hold its breath. When Shaggy stepped out of the bar doorway behind them, her sharp eyes flicked between Luffy and Rayleigh, already knowing something had changed. Rayleigh said nothing. But the silence that followed was heavier than the darkness that had nearly sunk the boat. Luffy repeated it all to Shaggy without embellishment. "Ace. Portgas d Rouge. Gold D. Roger." He didn't soften it, didn't dress it up. He just said it the way it was, because lying to her felt wrong somehow. Like the darkness inside him would know. Shaggy froze. Not the casual stillness she wore when trouble walked into her bar, not the relaxed poise of someone who had seen everything. This was different. Her cigarette burned down between her fingers, forgotten, ash falling to the floor as she stared at Luffy like he'd just rewritten history in front of her. "Roger's son," she said quietly. Luffy nodded. "My brother." "Don't remind me," Rox muttered, irritation thick in his voice. Rayleigh exhaled through his nose and rubbed the bridge of his glasses. "You really don't do things halfway, do you, kid?" "That's why I need you," Luffy said again, not louder, just more honest. Rayleigh straightened. "I told you already, I've got responsibilities here. Connections. People I keep an eye on. Sabaody isn't a place you just walk away from." Shaggy's hand twitched. Then she grabbed the frying pan from behind the counter and smacked Rayleigh over the head with a sharp clang. "Ow." Rayleigh staggered sideways. "Shaggy." She planted a hand on her hip, eyes blazing. "Oh, don't start. You've been bored out of your mind for years." "That is not. You complain every week, she continued, jabbing the pan toward him. The gambling's repetitive. The pirates are predictable. The casinos keep banning you. You literally said a week ago that the most exciting thing that happened this month was someone trying to cheat you with fake chips. Rayleigh opened his mouth. She leaned closer, and I haven't been on a vacation in years. Silence fell like a guillotine. Rayleigh tried one last time, honey. The look Shaggy gave him could have killed sea kings. Luffy felt it physically. Even the darkness inside him recoiled. Rayleigh, Rocks, and every instinct Luffy had all reached the same conclusion at once. This argument was already over. Rayleigh cleared his throat. Well, when you put it that way. Shaggy straightened, satisfied. Good, then it's settled, we'll go. Luffy's eyes lit up. Really? Yes, she said firmly. This trip will be good for both of us. And it'll keep him. She flicked the pan toward Rayleigh, out of the casinos for a while. Rayleigh muttered, they started it. Luffy turned inward, awe dripping from his voice. Grandpa Rocks, why are all women so scary? Rocks snorted. You don't know the half of it, brat. Rayleigh sighed, already resigned. Dawn Island, you said? Luffy nodded so hard his neck almost snapped. Ace is gonna freak out. Shaggy smiled. Not her teasing smile, not her bar owner smile, but something sharper and older. Then we'd better make sure you live long enough to reach him. She glanced at Luffy's shadow, which didn't quite line up with the light anymore. And, she added, eyes narrowing thoughtfully, we're going to have rules. Rayleigh groaned. Oh no, Luffy grinned. Inside him, darkness and fire shifted. Uneasy, untrained, but alive. The past had just decided to take a vacation. 3 weeks later. 3 weeks changed things. Luffy didn't sink boats anymore, at least not by accident. The darkness still pressed around him, heavy and demanding, but it no longer dragged the world down every time he breathed wrong. Rayleigh called it tolerance, not control. Shaggy called it progress and threatened to hit both of them with a pan if they argued about definitions again. When the ship finally docked at Logatown, Rayleigh went quiet. I want to stop here, he said, voice even, but there was something tight beneath it. Just for a little while. Luffy nodded immediately. He didn't need an explanation. Logatown felt different from Sabaody. Older. Heavier. The air carried stories whether you wanted to hear them or not. As they walked through the town, Rayleigh's pace slowed, his eyes drifting to landmarks that meant nothing to most people and everything to him. They stopped at the execution platform. Rayleigh stood at the base, hands in his pockets, head tilted back as he looked up at the place where the world had changed. He hadn't been here that day. He hadn't been able to watch. Shaggy stayed back, giving him space. Rayleigh finally spoke. He laughed, he said softly. Right there. Like he was greeting an old friend. Luffy nodded. Sounds like him. Rayleigh smiled, sad, fond, and proud all at once. They didn't stay long. 3 days later, Dawn Island appeared on the horizon, green and familiar, sunlight breaking across the waves like a promise. Luffy leaned over the railing, grinning so wide it hurt. I'm home. Makino was the first to see them. She froze mid-wipe behind the bar, eyes widening as Luffy barreled through the door and nearly tackled her with a hug. Makino. She laughed, hugging him back tightly. You're taller and dirtier. Trained a lot. He said proudly. Her gaze shifted past him, taking in Rayleigh and Shaggy. Something about them made her straighten instinctively. Friends of yours? Family, Luffy said without thinking. Ace burst in moments later, scowling until he saw Luffy. Then everything cracked into a grin. You idiot. You disappear for weeks and just. Luffy shoved a small chest into his arms. Ace blinked. What's this? Open it. Inside lay a fruit shaped like flickering flame, its surface glowing warmly even in the shade. Ace stared. Is that the flame fruit? Luffy said. It's yours. The room went silent. Makino gasped. Ace looked up slowly. You serious? Luffy nodded. I found it for you. It suits you better than anyone. Ace hesitated. Just for a second. Then he smiled, soft, grateful, real. You're unbelievable. He bit into it. Fire erupted. Flames roared up his arms, dancing around him instead of burning, answering him like they'd been waiting. Ace laughed, loud and free. flames spiraling as naturally as breath. Rayleigh watched closely, eyes sharp. Shaggy smiled, satisfied. Luffy felt it then, a shift. Something locking into place. Darkness steadied. Fire answered, not chaos. Balance. Ace grinned at him through the flames. Guess we're both monsters now, huh? Luffy laughed. Yeah. Together. From the hill above the village, the sea stretched wide and endless. The journey had reached Dawn Island. The real training was about to begin. 3 weeks under Rayleigh felt longer than years. He didn't ease them into it. There were no warm-ups, no gentle lessons, no patience for excuses. Dawn Island became a battlefield from sunrise to sunset, the forest scarred with burn marks, shattered stone, and deep gouges carved into the earth. Again, Rayleigh said calmly. Luffy's arms shook as he tightened his grip on his sword. Sweat soaked his shirt, his breathing heavy, but his eyes burned with focus. Darkness rolled around his feet like a living thing, dragging at the ground, bending light toward him. At the same time, faint heat shimmered around his other hand, a reminder of the second power resting inside him. He moved. The blade swung in a clean arc, darkness clinging to the steel as if it belonged there. The air screamed as gravity twisted along the slash, ripping forward in a crescent wave that crushed everything in its path. Trees splintered, stone collapsed inward, and the ground tore itself apart as if afraid to remain whole. Luffy skidded to a stop, boots digging trenches into the dirt. Darkness slash, he muttered, half proud, half exhausted. Rayleigh raised an eyebrow. You named it already? Luffy grinned weakly. Felt right. Inside him, rocks hummed with approval. Now you're thinking like a weapon. Rayleigh didn't praise him. He never did. You relied too much on your fruits, again. Before Luffy could respond, Rayleigh vanished, reappearing inches from his face. A finger tapped Luffy's chest. Hockey, Rayleigh said sharply. Luffy reacted on instinct. Armament surge, coating his body just as Rayleigh's strike landed. The impact sent him flying anyway, slamming into a tree hard enough to crack the trunk. Ace winced. Damn, observation, Rayleigh snapped, turning toward Ace. If you saw it coming, why didn't you warn him? Ace grit his teeth, flames flickering around his shoulders, because he needs to learn to feel it himself. Rayleigh nodded once. Good answer. Again. Ace stepped forward, fire flowing around him more smoothly now, responding like an extension of his body instead of something wild. He launched a controlled burst, not an explosion, but a focused stream, shaping the flames into a rotating spiral. Luffy rolled aside at the last second, darkness yanking him off balance but saving him from being roasted. Rayleigh watched both of them carefully. Better, both of you, but not good enough. By nightfall, they could barely stand. Their bodies were bruised, burned, aching in ways that sank deep into bone. Yet something undeniable had changed. Luffy's darkness no longer lashed out randomly. It listened, and he was already used to his rubber powers. His swordsmanship flowed into it naturally, each strike heavier, more precise. His haki was sharpening fast, instincts aligning, senses stretching wider with every day. Ace, too, was changing. Fire no longer consumed space around him, it answered him. His armament hardened under Rayleigh's relentless pressure, and his observation began to bloom, subtle but real. From the village below, laughter drifted upward. Makino's bar glowed warmly in the evening light. Inside, Shaggy leaned against the counter, sipping a drink while Makino cleaned glasses. They talked easily, about the boys, about the sea, about places Makino had never seen and stories Shaggy never fully told. They're monsters, Makino said fondly, glancing toward the hill. Shaggy smiled. They'll need to be. Makino hesitated. Do you think they'll be okay? Shaggy's eyes sharpened briefly, ancient and knowing. No, she said honestly, but they'll survive. And sometimes, that's better. Up on the hill, Luffy lay flat on his back, staring at the stars, darkness pooling quietly around him instead of dragging him down. Ace, he said softly. We're gonna be strong. Ace chuckled, flames flickering faintly in the dark. With him training us? We don't have a choice. Rayleigh stood above them, arms crossed, watching the future sharpen itself through pain and discipline. The world wasn't ready for what Dawn Island was forging. But it would be. 3 months later, the mountain shook. Not from training this time, but from laughter, Monkey D. Garp landed at the edge of Dawn Island in a familiar way. Loud, unapologetic, and utterly unconcerned with collateral damage. The old Vice Admiral stretched his arms, cracked his neck, and grinned as the sea breeze hit his face. "Been too damn long," he muttered, "almost a year." His grin softened, just a little. He was genuinely happy. 2 grandsons on the same island, alive, not arrested, not dead. By Garp's standards, that was a miracle. Then his smile sharpened. And let's hope that damn ghost of rocks hasn't messed the brat up too much. First stop was obvious. Makino's bar. The bell above the door chimed as Garp ducked inside, filling the room instantly with his presence. Makino looked up from the counter, and froze for half a second before smiling brightly. "Garp," she said. "It's been a while." "Makino," Garp boomed, slapping the counter hard enough to rattle the bottles. "Where are those 2 grandsons of mine, huh? I come all this way and—" "Oh ho." A familiar, lazy voice cut in. "So you're still yelling indoors, Garp." Garp blinked. He turned slowly, very slowly. Shaki was leaning against the counter, cigarette in hand, perfectly relaxed. "Oh," Garp said. "Hey, Shaki." Then realization hit him like a cannonball. "Wait." He spun fully toward her, eyes bulging. "Shaki? What are you doing here?" Shaki smirked. "Vacation." Garp's jaw dropped, his brain stalled. Before he could recover, the door swung open again. Ace and Luffy walked in, sweaty, bruised, and grinning like idiots. "Oi, Makino. We're back," Luffy called. Ace stretched, flames flickering lazily around his fingers. "Man, Rayleigh went way harder today." Garp's eyes snapped to the fire. "Fire?" Ace glanced at his hand. "Oh. Yeah. I ate the flame fruit." Silence. Then, "What?" Garp roared. Luffy beamed. "Oh, and Gramps, I ate a second devil fruit." Garp's soul briefly left his body. "A what?" Luffy casually lifted a hand. Darkness poured out, heavy and crushing, the light in the room bending unnaturally as shadows stretched toward him. The air thickened. The floor creaked. "The yami no mi," Luffy said proudly. Garp stared. At the darkness. At the fire. At his grandsons. Then, "Yo," another voice said mildly from behind them. "Training done for the day?" Garp turned. Rayleigh stood in the doorway. The Dark King. Alive. Relaxed. On Dawn Island. Garp's eye twitched. Rayleigh, Garp. They stared at each other. Then Garp slowly looked between Rayleigh, Shaki, Ace, Luffy. "You're training them?" Rayleigh nodded. "Yes, with her," Garp added weakly. Shaki waved. "Hi." Garp's brain finally caught up. His knees buckled. He dropped into a chair with a crash, staring straight ahead like the world had personally betrayed him. Roger's son. Rock's grandson. 2 devil fruits. The Dark King and his wife. Inside Luffy, Rock's Xebec laughed until it echoed. "Oh boy," he crowed. "That face. Priceless." Garp slammed his fists onto the table, veins bulging. "I leave for 1 year." Makino quietly slid him a drink. Garp downed it in one gulp. Then he looked up, eyes burning. "All of you are explaining, right, now." Outside, the wind carried laughter, firelight, and darkness together. Dawn Island had just become the most dangerous place in the world. The explanation took a long time. Rayleigh did most of the talking. Calm. Precise. No theatrics. He explained the island, the fruit, the training, the precautions. He explained why he was here and why Shaki agreed. He left nothing important out, because with Garp, half-truths were worse than lies. Garp listened in silence. That alone was terrifying. Arms crossed. Brow furrowed. Jaw tight. He didn't interrupt, didn't shout, didn't throw a single punch through a wall. When Rayleigh finally finished, the old Vice Admiral exhaled slowly and nodded once. "I don't like it," Garp said. "But I get it." Everyone relaxed, just a little. Then Luffy stepped forward. "There's 2 more things," he said. Garp sighed. "Of course there are." Luffy scratched the back of his head, suddenly serious. "First, Grandpa Rocks doesn't have much time left." That made Garp pause. 6 months, Luffy continued. Maybe less. After that, we won't be two anymore. We'll become one. Silence. Garp stared at him for a long moment, then he snorted. Oh, what a shame. Inside Luffy, Rocks bristled. Garp's voice dropped, rough and honest. Good riddance. Luffy nodded. Yeah. I figured you'd say that. Rocks laughed anyway, loud and pleased. Still charming as ever, you old fruitcake. Garp rolled his shoulders. What's the second thing? Luffy took a step closer. Then another. Then, to the absolute horror of everyone present, he bowed. Deep. Respectful. Formal. Garp's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. What are you doing? He roared. Stand up, what's wrong with you? Luffy stayed bowed. I have a request, he said clearly. Garp's heart skipped. Literally. His hand went to his chest. No, every time you say that, something explodes. I want to change my name. The world stopped. Say that again, Garp said very slowly. I don't want to be Monkey D. Luffy anymore, Luffy said. I want to be Davy D. Luffy. Garp made a strangled sound. Rayleigh leaned back. Shaggy muttered, oh boy. You want to be what? Garp bellowed, slamming his fists into the table hard enough to crack it. Are you trying to kill me? Luffy finally straightened, meeting Garp's furious gaze without flinching. I want to honor my mom. That stopped him. Completely. The rage drained from Garp's face, replaced by something raw and unguarded. His fists loosened. His shoulders sagged just a little. Your mother, he repeated quietly. Luffy nodded. Davy. The name hung in the air. Garp looked away, jaw clenched so hard his teeth creaked. Memories he never talked about clawed their way up whether he liked it or not. A woman who laughed too easily. A name that history tried to bury. A choice that had cost more than anyone ever knew. Inside Luffy, Rocks went silent. For once. Garp took a long breath, then another. You've got her eyes, he said gruffly, stubborn, just like her. Luffy smiled softly. That's why. Garp rubbed his face with one massive hand, exhausted in a way no battle had ever managed. You're gonna give the whole world a heart attack, you know that? Probably, Luffy said. Garp barked out a short, helpless laugh. Then he looked at Rayleigh. You're really training this idiot. Rayleigh smiled faintly. Someone has to. Garp looked back at Luffy, at the fire, the darkness, the weight of two legacies and a third being forged. Davy D. Luffy, he muttered. The name felt dangerous. And inevitable. Inside Luffy, Rocks finally spoke again, voice quiet but amused. Well, looks like the world just got a new problem. The dawn outside burned brighter than before. Evening settled gently over Dawn Island, warm and familiar, the kind of night that made Makino's bar feel like the safest place in the world. The lamps were lit. Bottles clinked softly. Outside, the sea whispered instead of roared. Luffy sat cross-legged on a stool, elbows on the counter, talking faster the more excited he got. Rayleigh leaned back with his drink. Shaggy watched with amused interest, Ace sprawled lazily nearby, and Garp occupied an entire table by himself, grumbling into his glass. So, Luffy said, grinning, Grandpa Rocks had an idea. That alone made Garp tense. Oh no, the old Vice Admiral muttered. I hate it already. Luffy ignored him. Since me and Ace aren't starting our journey until we're 17, he says it'd be a waste to just stay here training the whole time. Power's important, yeah, but experience matters more. Rayleigh's eyes sharpened slightly. He's not wrong. Luffy nodded enthusiastically. Right? So he suggested we spend at least 8 years aboard a real pirate ship. Learn how crews actually work. The sea routes. The politics. The fights that don't end with punching someone really hard. Ace raised an eyebrow. 8 years, huh? Garp slammed his mug down. Absolutely not. Luffy flinched but pushed on. Gramps, listen. No, Garp barked. What lunatic pirate would take you two idiots in for 8 years? Rayleigh smiled. That was never a good sign. Oh, he said casually, I know exactly who. The room went quiet. Shaggy tilted her head. You're thinking the same thing I am. Inside Luffy, Rocks stirred, pleased. Rayleigh looked straight at Luffy. Rocks wants you to join Edward Newgate's crew. Luffy nodded. Yeah. Whitebeard. Makino gasped softly. Ace sat up straight. Garp went very still. You want my grandsons, Garp said slowly, to sail under the strongest pirate alive. Yes, Rayleigh replied calmly, for 8 years. With him, Garp added. The man who was Rock's right-hand monster. Luffy scratched his cheek. Well, yeah. Grandpa Rocks said he trusts him. Said Whitebeard's different. Has rules. A family. Ace stared at Luffy, stunned. You're serious? Totally, Luffy said. He said Pops? Whitebeard. Would keep us alive. Make us strong. And make sure we don't turn into idiots who die before our time. Garp's eye twitched. That ship is full of monsters. So are we, Luffy said simply. Silence followed. Rayleigh watched Garp carefully. If you want them prepared for what's coming, he said quietly, there is no better place. Garp leaned back, staring at the ceiling like it personally offended him. I'm surrounded by maniacs. Luffy suddenly perked up. Oh, and there's one more thing. Ace groaned. There's always one more thing. I want to bring someone with me, Luffy said. She'll be my navigator. Ace froze. Slowly, a grin spread across his face. Oh, Luffy's got a girlfriend? I do not. Luffy snapped instantly. She's just really good at maps. Ace laughed, loud and teasing. Sure she is. Makino smiled knowingly. Shaki smirked into her drink. Rayleigh raised an eyebrow. A navigator, huh? Smart choice. Garp sighed deeply, defeated on levels he didn't even know existed. First Whitebeard, he muttered. Now girls. Roger, Rocks, you both owe me. Inside Luffy, Rocks laughed softly, satisfied. Edward will take them, he said. And when they return, the world won't recognize them. Luffy grinned, staring into the flickering light of the bar, already imagining the sea ahead. 8 years. A new crew. And the beginning of a legend long before it ever set sail under its own flag. 2 weeks later, the wind carried the sound of departure. Garp stood at the shore, coat draped over his shoulders, marine ship anchored and ready behind him. He looked older somehow, still massive, still unbreakable, but quieter now. Dawn Island had a way of doing that. Of reminding people what they were fighting for. He crossed his arms and looked down at Luffy. I'll get in contact with Whitebeard, he said gruffly. That part's on me. Luffy grinned. Thanks, Gramps. Garp snorted. Don't thank me yet. When do I tell the idiot to come looking for you? Luffy didn't hesitate. In a year and a half. Rayleigh, standing a short distance away, nodded once. That's how long I'm staying here. Garp glanced at him. Figured as much. Then, to Luffy, you sure? Yeah, Luffy said. That's enough time. Garp nodded slowly, then paused, turning back with a scowl. Oh. And tell that bastard Rocks I said he can go to hell. Inside Luffy, laughter erupted. Luffy smiled innocently. He says you first. Garp barked out a loud laugh, sharp and genuine. Damn right I did. He turned toward the ship, then stopped one last time. His voice dropped, serious again. Good luck. He looked at Ace. Portgas d Ace. Ace straightened. Yes, sir. Then Garp's gaze shifted to Luffy. And you? For just a heartbeat, there was something heavy there, pride, worry, regret, all tangled together. Davy D. Luffy. Luffy beamed. Garp waved once, sharply, and boarded the ship. The sails caught the wind, and soon the marine vessel pulled away from the island, growing smaller against the horizon until it vanished completely. Luffy watched until it was gone. Then he stretched, hands behind his head. All right. Ace blinked. All right what? Tomorrow, Luffy said cheerfully. I'm going to Nami's island. The silence that followed was immediate. Ace slowly turned toward him. You what? Ace burst out laughing. Oh, sure. Lessons. You're gonna kiss your girlfriend, aren't you? I do not have a girlfriend, Luffy yelled. Ace wiped a tear from his eye. You're going to her island. You're smiling like an idiot. I'm not blind. Makino laughed from the bar doorway. Shaki smirked knowingly. Rayleigh simply sighed, already resigned. Inside Luffy, Rocks hummed with amusement. Ah, youth, he mused. Truly terrifying. Luffy looked out toward the sea again, heart light, future wide open. Tomorrow, a navigator. Soon, Whitebeard. And one day, his own flag. The dawn over Dawn Island burned bright, unaware that history had already begun to move. The trip to Kokoyashi village was calm, almost deceptively so. Luffy sat at the bow of the small boat, feet dangling over the edge, letting the spray hit his face. Ace leaned against the mast, arms crossed, pretending not to be interested while absolutely watching everything. Rayleigh handled the sail with practiced ease, eyes scanning the sea more out of habit than concern. This place, Rayleigh said casually, has seen its share of storms. Luffy grinned. Yeah, but it's got good people. When the familiar coastline came into view, Luffy was already on his feet. Kokoyashi village looked peaceful, pinwheels turning in the breeze, orange trees swaying gently. They didn't go to the village square, they went straight to Belmare's house. The door barely had time to open before Luffy. Nami slammed into him at full speed, arms wrapping around his waist as she hugged him tight. Luffy laughed, nearly falling backward under the force. Nami. You got stronger, he said honestly. You disappeared, she snapped, burying her face in his shirt anyway, you idiot. Ace smiled, right up until Negico stepped into view. He froze. Completely. His face went red. His posture stiffened. His cool, confident swagger evaporated in an instant. Hi, Ace managed. Negico raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. Hello? Ace looked like he'd forgotten how language worked. Luffy blinked, then grinned. Ace, this is Nami's sister. I know, I didn't, Ace flailed verbally, then gave up, staring very intently at a wall. Belmere stepped forward next. She took one look at Rayleigh and stopped dead. The air changed. Her eyes widened, not in fear, but in sharp recognition. She'd been a marine long enough to know legends when she saw them. Dark King, she breathed. Rayleigh inclined his head politely. Good evening. Belmere stared at him, then at Luffy, then back at Rayleigh. Why is the Dark King in my house? Luffy scratched his cheek. Long story. They sat. Tea was poured, though Belmare's hands shook just a little. Nami stayed close to Luffy, refusing to let go entirely, while Ace slowly recovered just enough dignity to sit upright, though he still avoided looking at Negico. Luffy took a breath. I wanted to tell you first, he said to Nami, before anyone else. He explained everything. Whitebeard. 8 years. Training. Experience. Waiting until 17. Nami listened silently, eyes wide. When he finished, she didn't hesitate. Then I'm coming with you. The room froze. Luffy blinked. What? Where you go, I go, Nami said firmly. You need a navigator. I'm not letting you learn the grand line from idiots. Ace snorted. Hey. Belmere went pale. 8 years? She repeated faintly. On Whitebeard's ship? She swayed. Negico caught her just in time. Mom. Belmere stared at Nami like she'd just announced she was sailing into a hurricane. You're still a child. Silence followed. Rayleigh watched quietly, impressed. Luffy swallowed. I won't make you, he said softly. Nami stepped closer and grabbed his hand. You're not. I'm choosing. Belmere closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then sighed. I hate pirates, she muttered. Every last one of you. Then she opened her eyes and smiled sadly. But I raised you to choose your own sea. Luffy felt something warm tighten in his chest. Ace looked between the sisters again, then straightened, suddenly confident. So, Negico. Negico smiled slowly. Relax, you're embarrassing yourself. Ace groaned. Outside, the pinwheels turned. Another piece fell into place. The crew, unfinished, unflagged, unnamed, was beginning to form. 6 months passed like a long, tightening breath. Dawn Island had grown quieter, not calmer, but focused. Training scars covered the hills. Burned earth had healed into harder ground. The sea itself seemed to recognize the boy who stood at the cliff's edge now, hat fluttering, shadow stretching longer than the light behind him. Luffy knelt, eyes closed. The darkness around him didn't writhe anymore, it waited. Inside, Rocks Xebec stood clearer than ever. No longer a looming presence, but something thinner, fading at the edges, like a reflection at dusk. This is it, Rocks said. Luffy nodded slowly. Yeah, I can feel it. Over the past 6 months, the voice had grown quieter. Advice came less often. The presence that once pushed and laughed and commanded had softened into something almost peaceful. Rayleigh had warned him this would happen. That the mind couldn't hold two wills forever. Today, there would be one. "You did well," Rox said, pride heavy in his tone. "Better than I ever did at your age." Luffy's throat tightened. "I had help." Rox chuckled. "You always did." Then his voice lowered. "I'm proud of you, grandson. Not for the power. For the choices." The darkness shifted, not outward, but inward. Luffy inhaled. And let go. There was no explosion. No roar. No world-shaking tremor. Just a deep, resonant pull, like the tide returning to the sea. Memories, instincts, rage, ambition. Everything that was Rox folded into Luffy's core, not as a parasite, not as a tyrant, but as inheritance. Two wills aligned. One remained. When Luffy opened his eyes, the world felt sharper, heavier, quieter. "I'm still me," he said softly. "Of course you are," Rox replied, his voice already fading. "I was never meant to replace you. Only to get you here." The presence dissolved, not violently, but warmly, like embers sinking into ash. For the first time in a year, Luffy was alone in his own mind. And stronger for it. Behind him, Rayleigh watched from a distance, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He felt it the moment it happened. The pressure change, the sudden stillness of Luffy's aura. "It's done," he murmured. Not far away, Nami stood on the training field, breathing hard, sweat on her brow, eyes narrowed in fierce concentration. Over the past months, Rayleigh had begun teaching her too. Not strength, not domination, but awareness. Observation hockey. Again, Rayleigh had told her, countless times, "Don't look. Feel." Now, without opening her eyes, Nami smiled. "I know," she said quietly, "something changed." Luffy stood and turned, shadow falling perfectly in line with his body for the first time. No echoes. No second heartbeat. Just him. When he walked back toward them, Rayleigh met his gaze and nodded once, approval without words. "Welcome back," the Dark King said. Luffy grinned. "Feels weird, lighter." Nami crossed her arms, smirking. "Good, because we're not slowing down." The sun dipped low over Dawn Island, casting long shadows across land that had forged monsters, navigators, and kings in waiting. 6 months were over. The boy who had carried another legend inside him was gone. What remained was Davy D. Luffy, whole, tempered, and finally ready for the sea that was coming. The marine ship cut cleanly through the water, its white hull gleaming beneath the sun as it sailed near the outer waters of Sabodi Archipelago. The breeze was calm, deceptive in its peace. On the deck, 3 children stood side by side. Luffy leaned casually against the railing, straw hat tilted back, eyes fixed on the horizon. Ace stood with his arms crossed, jaw set, fire flickering faintly under his skin even when he wasn't using it. Nami stood between them, hands clenched at her sides, expression sharp and determined. Behind them, Monkey D. Garp watched in silence. For once, the hero of the Marines wasn't laughing. "You're sure about this?" Garp asked at last, his voice low, serious in a way that made the air feel heavier. Luffy didn't hesitate. 100%, Gramps. Nami nodded immediately, "Me too." Ace didn't speak. He simply nodded once, firmly. Garp closed his eyes and let out a long breath through his nose. "TCH, 3 damn lunatics," he muttered. He turned his sharp gaze to Nami. "Once you step onto that ship, there's no special treatment. No safety nets. Pirates don't care how old you are." Nami met his stare without flinching. "I know." For a brief moment, Garp looked almost impressed. Then his expression shifted, something heavier creeping into his eyes. "And Belle Mere?" he asked quietly. Nami's fingers tightened. "She's gone," she said carefully. Garp's brow furrowed. "Gone where?" Nami hesitated just a fraction of a second, too small for anyone else to notice. But Luffy and Ace already knew. "She told me before she left," Nami said, choosing her words. "Said she was going to see an old friend." Garp stared at her. "That's all?" Nami nodded. "That's all she told me." Garp studied her face, searching for cracks, lies, anything. But Nami had learned well. from pirates, from marines, from survival itself. Finally, Garp turned away with a grunt. HMPH, figures. Flashback. 3.5 weeks earlier, Kokoyashi village was quiet that night. The table inside Belle Mare's house was crowded. Luffy, Ace, Nami, Najiko, and Belle Mare herself. Food spread everywhere, laughter echoing warmly against the walls. Then came a knock. Not loud, not urgent, but deliberate. Belle Mare froze. She knew that knock. When she opened the door, the air itself seemed to tense. A tall man stood outside, cloak shifting in the wind, eyes sharp and unreadable. Monkey D. Dragon. Long time, he said calmly. Belle Mare stared at him, cigarette falling from her lips. You've got some nerve, she said. Dragon's gaze flicked briefly toward the table, to the children who had gone silent. I won't stay long, he said. I came to ask you something. Belle Mare crossed her arms. I'm done spying. I know, Dragon replied. That's not why I'm here. His eyes softened, just slightly. I need an operative, not a spy, someone I trust. Silence filled the room. Belle Mare looked back at her daughters. At Nami. At Najiko. Then back at Dragon. You always were good at asking for impossible things, she muttered. Dragon waited. At last, Belle Mare exhaled sharply. Fine, she said. But I'm not going alone. Najiko stiffened. Mom. Belle Mare put a hand on her shoulder. You're coming with me. Dragon nodded once. Good. The children at the table watched, understanding just enough to know this was serious. Luffy didn't say a word. Neither did Ace, and none of them told Garp. Back to the present, the marine ship continued forward, sails snapping softly in the wind. Garp stood at the bow now, staring ahead, fists clenched. Behind him, 3 children stood ready to walk straight into a Yonko's world. Garp finally spoke again, voice rough. Once I hand you over to Whitebeard, you're not my responsibility anymore. Luffy grinned. Yeah, that's kinda the point. Ace smirked. Relax, old man. We'll survive. Nami adjusted her stance, eyes bright with determination, and we'll come back stronger. Garp snorted. Damn right you will, he said. You'd better. The marine ship sailed on. Toward Whitebeard. Toward the point of no return. The marine ship slowed as a small, unremarkable island appeared ahead. No flags. No ports. Just rock, trees, and quiet sea. From the deck, Monkey D. Garp leaned closer to the 3 children, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Listen carefully, he said. That island up ahead? Luffy's grin faded. Ace straightened. Nami's eyes sharpened. Whitebeard is on it, Garp continued. This is as far as I can take you. All 3 stiffened. Garp lowered his voice even more, making sure no marine could hear. None of my men know where you're really going. I told them you're orphans. I'm returning to their parents. This whole trip, he tapped the deck with a finger, never happened. It's off the record. The children nodded immediately. Ace swallowed. So, this is it. Yeah, Garp said quietly. From here on, you're pirates. He straightened, voice firm again as the lifeboat was prepared. Ace stepped in first. Garp grabbed his shoulder. Don't be too stupid. Ace grinned. I'll try. Nami followed. Garp paused, then sighed. You, watch after him. Nami nodded. Yes, Mr. Garp. Finally, Luffy. Garp loomed over him, eyes burning. And you? Luffy looked up innocently. Don't cause a damn disaster, Garp growled. Luffy nodded hard. Promise. That worried Garp more than anything. The lifeboat was lowered gently into the water. Ace and Luffy grabbed the oars. Nami sat comfortably in the middle, hands folded in her lap. The rope was released. They drifted free. Ace rowed hard. Luffy rowed harder. Nami did nothing. Ace glanced back. Hey. No response. Aren't you gonna row? Ace snapped. Nami fluttered her eyelashes sweetly. Why would I? Ace stared. Because you have arms? Nami smiled wider. Luffy and I voted. Ace blinked. Voted? Nami nodded. 2-1. I don't have to row. Luffy grinned proudly. Democracy? Ace's eye twitched. You're kidding me. Nope, Nami said cheerfully. Ace muttered under his breath, "Stupid simp of a brother, damn greedy orange-haired." Wham! Nami's fist slammed into the top of his head. Ace yelped. "Ow, watch your mouth," she snapped, instantly dropping the cute act. Luffy laughed so hard he nearly dropped his oar. "You deserved that," Luffy said between laughs. Ace groaned, rubbing his head. "This is gonna be a long 8 years." The island slowly grew closer, and somewhere beyond the trees, the strongest pirate in the world waited. The lifeboat scraped gently against the shore. The island was quiet at first glance, thick forest, tall trees, birds scattering as the 3 children stepped onto land. No docks. No flags. No signs of pirates. But Luffy froze. "Food," he whispered. Ace raised a brow. "What?" Luffy sniffed the air again, eyes lighting up. "Someone's cooking. A lot." Nami exhaled. "Of course you smell that." They pushed deeper into the forest, branches crunching underfoot, the smell growing stronger with every step. Meat. Fire. Smoke. Seasoning. Enough food to feed an army. Then the trees opened, and the world changed. In the center of a massive clearing stood a giant. A man so enormous he made the forest look small, Whitebeard. His massive basento rested against the ground. His scarred chest rose and fell slowly. Around him sat dozens of pirates, laughing, drinking, eating, monsters every one of them. The laughter died the moment the children stepped into view. Whitebeard looked up, and smiled. "Well now," he said, voice deep enough to shake the ground. "So you're the 3 brats Garp told me about." He straightened to his full height. "You want to sail with my crew?" Ace swallowed. Nami held her ground. Even Davy D. Luffy, with Rock's memories whispering inside him, stared up at the sheer weight of the man. Whitebeard's eyes shifted, sharp, knowing. "Welcome," he rumbled, "grandson of Rocks." Luffy stiffened. "And son of Roger." Ace's jaw clenched. Whitebeard smiled wider. Before anyone could speak, a loud voice burst out laughing. "Well, I'll be damned," said Thatch. "They're tiny." Marco leaned closer, eyes curious. "And the girl?" Nami stepped forward confidently. "Oh, I'm with them," she said brightly. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a wallet, holding it up. Thatch blinked. "Wait." He patted his coat. His smile vanished. He checked again, then screamed, "That's my wallet." The clearing exploded with laughter. Pirates doubled over. Drinks spilled. Someone fell backward off a log. Even Whitebeard threw his head back and laughed, the sound booming through the forest. Nami smirked innocently. "You dropped it." Thatch lunged forward. "When?" "Earlier," Nami replied sweetly. Marco laughed. "She's good." Luffy grinned. "She's the best," Ace facepalmed. But not everyone was laughing. From the shadows at the edge of the clearing, Teach watched. His fist clenched slowly. So, it was true. My perfect sister really did have a child. Teach's eyes burned as he stared at Luffy. "I thought it was just a rumor." He didn't smile, didn't laugh, didn't move. "I don't care if that brat is my nephew. I've been planning for far too long." His gaze dropped to Luffy's shadow, the way it bent, the way it felt wrong. "I just need to find the yummy no mi." His teeth clenched. "And father, I'll show you who your heir was supposed to be." The fire crackled. The laughter roared. And destiny quietly tightened its grip. The clearing had turned into a full celebration. Huge fires burned. Meat roasted on spits. Barrels were cracked open and passed around freely. Laughter rolled through the forest as the Whitebeard pirates welcomed their newest additions. Not as recruits, not as crew yet, but as family in waiting. Luffy sat cross-legged near the fire, stuffing his face. Ace leaned back with his arms behind his head, already enjoying the attention. Nami sat nearby, counting coins she had found during the party. Marco crouched near them, smiling lazily. "So," Marco said, glancing between the brothers, "that old nutjob Garp told us you two have devil fruits." Ace grinned. "Yeah." Luffy nodded, mouth full. Ace stood up dramatically. "Guess I'll go first." Flames burst to life around his arms, fire rolling smoothly across his body like it belonged there. The heat rippled through the air as Ace laughed. Flame fruit," he said proudly. Marco blinked once. Cute. Then his body ignited, not in fire, but blue flames. His form shifted as massive phoenix wings unfurled behind him, radiant and blazing. Ace's jaw dropped. Number way. Marco chuckled. Mythical zone. Phoenix. Ace sat down very slowly. I take it back. That's not cute. Nami raised a hand. I don't have a devil fruit, Marco. Oh. Marco tilted his head. But Mr. Rayleigh taught me observation hockey, she added casually. That's how I stole Mr. Thatch's wallet. From across the fire, Thatch growled, I will get you for that. Nami smiled sweetly. You're welcome to try. Before Marco could respond, a calm voice cut through the laughter. So, said Vista, hand resting on his sword, how good are you with a blade, kid? Luffy looked up. He smiled. Oh, he said cheerfully. I know a couple of tricks. Silence rippled outward. Whitebeard laughed from his seat. Gurarara. That sounds fun. Clear the floor. The pirates quickly backed away, forming a wide circle. Vista stepped forward, amused. Don't worry, kid. I'll try not to rough you up too badly. Luffy stood. Drew his sword. Okay. Then, gear, second. The ground cracked. Luffy vanished. Vista barely managed to parry as Luffy slammed into him, the impact sending shockwaves through the clearing. Vista skidded back, boots digging trenches into the dirt. His eyes widened. Luffy's blade was black. Armament hockey? Vista muttered. At your age? Luffy pulled back, sword lowering. Yeah. Rayleigh trained us. He relaxed. Then released a small burst of power, not loud. Not violent, but unmistakable. Conqueror's hockey. The air froze. Cups rattled. Fires flickered. Several weaker pirates stiffened as pressure rolled over the clearing like a silent wave. Everyone stared. Whitebeard slowly leaned forward. Ho. Luffy scratched his cheek. Oh, yeah. I also ate 2 devil fruits. Dead silence. Marco spun around. Wait, what? Luffy demonstrated casually, stretching his arm across the clearing, rubber snapping back into place. Gum fruit. Then his other arm darkened, pitch black, shadows crawling across his skin. The dark fruit, he explained calmly, like it was nothing. What it did. What it took. What it could nullify. Even Whitebeard's laughter stopped. A fruit that cancels other devil fruits, Whitebeard said slowly. Gurarara, that's dangerous. From the shadows, Blackbeard smiled. So that brat has it after all. Perfect. I just need to take it, and I know how. I just need to time it, perfectly. The fire crackled. The party resumed, and the seed of betrayal dug itself deeper into the earth. Morning came fast. Too fast. The celebration fires were still smoking when Marco kicked a bucket across the deck. All right, he said cheerfully. Deckhand duty. All 3 of you. 3 mops hit the deck. Nami stared at hers like it had personally offended her. She inhaled. Then, she activated the eyes. Big, glossy. Slightly trembling lower lip. She tilted her head just a little. I'm just a cute little girl, Nami said softly. Do I really have to scrub? Ace froze. Then slowly turned toward Luffy with a wicked grin. Oh my god, he whispered. This is amazing. Luffy scratched his head. It's kinda working. Before Marco could respond, Thatch leaned down, squinting at her. Oh no you don't, Missy. Nami blinked. Huh? Thatch crossed his arms. I know that look. I lost a wallet to that look. Ace burst out laughing. She shot him a glare so sharp it could cut steel. Before she could speak, 3 voices at once. Marco, Thatch, and Vista all pointed at her. No manipulating, Marco said. No stealing, Thatch added. No dumping work on others, Vista finished. Ace wiped tears from his eyes. She's defeated. Nami slumped dramatically. Cruel world. Marco dropped a mop into her hands. Welcome to the family. Whitebeard's laughter rolled across the deck. Gurarara. No shortcuts on my ship. Nami sighed, then smirked. Fine. But as she started scrubbing, her eyes were already calculating. Deckhand duty had begun, and the Whitebeard pirates had no idea what kind of storm they'd just invited aboard. 6 months passed faster than any of them expected. Life aboard the Whitebeard pirate's ship became routine, hard, brutal, and strangely comforting. Chores in the morning. Training until their bodies screamed. More chores. Then food, laughter, and stories late into the night. Somewhere along the way, it happened naturally. Pops. The word slipped out one evening, first from Ace, then from Nami, and finally from Luffy himself. Whitebeard never corrected them. Training was relentless. Marco oversaw most of it, assisted by the other commanders. Ace learned fast, his armament hardened daily, his observation sharpening with every spar. Fire no longer raged, it obeyed. Nami surprised everyone. Her observation haki became frighteningly precise. She could sense intent, danger, even emotion before words were spoken. She had begun learning armament as well, struggling but improving through stubborn determination. And then there was Luffy. He already knew all 3 forms of haki. Now he was perfecting them: balance, control, restraint. The strangest change, though, came from Nami. The first time she saw Whitebeard fight, everything changed. A group of foolish pirates had tried to challenge the old man, thinking age made him weak. Whitebeard proved them wrong in seconds. His Basento moved like a force of nature. Nami watched in silence, eyes shining. "That weapon," she whispered. From that day on, she started training with a polearm whenever she could. A smaller version, obviously, but the intent was there. Ace laughed. "You're copying Pops now." Nami didn't deny it. "I like things that hit really hard." One night, Whitebeard summoned Luffy to his quarters. The massive cabin was quiet, lanterns swaying gently with the sea. Whitebeard sat calmly, Basento resting nearby. "Sit," he said. Luffy obeyed. Whitebeard studied him for a long moment. "Garp told me something," he said slowly. "Said Rock's spirit merged with you." Luffy nodded. "Yeah, it's true. And?" Whitebeard asked. "How is it?" Luffy thought for a moment. "I liked Grandpa Rock's. Even if we shared a body, I knew it wouldn't last." Whitebeard smiled faintly. "He and your mother would be proud of you, kid." Luffy's chest tightened. "Thanks, Pops." Whitebeard nodded, then his expression sharpened. "So," he said calmly, "you've noticed Teach watching you." Luffy nodded again. "Yeah. Haven't talked to him much, but I think he's up to something." Whitebeard grunted. "So do I," then his voice hardened. "But remember this. He's a crew member. Same as you. Until he gives me a reason to confirm my suspicions, he stays under my protection." Luffy bowed his head slightly. "Okay." Whitebeard smiled again, the tension easing. He paused. "You're on night duty tonight." Luffy stiffened. "And you'd better not fall asleep like last time," Whitebeard added. "If you do, no breakfast for 3 days." Luffy snapped to attention instantly, saluting so hard it almost echoed. "Yes, Pops." He turned and hurried out. Whitebeard chuckled softly as the door closed. Outside, the sea rolled quietly under the stars, and somewhere in the shadows of the ship, plans continued to form. The family was strong, but even families had cracks. Night swallowed the deck. The sea was calm, too calm. A shadow moved between barrels. Blackbeard crept forward, boots silent against the wood. In one hand, a knife. In the other, an apple, ready to catch the devil fruit the moment its owner died. His intent was simple. Kill the brat. Take the yummy yummy no mi. Claim what only he deserved. Ahead, Luffy sat slumped against a barrel, head tilted, breathing slow. Asleep. Just like the last 3 nights. Teach smiled. "So careless," he whispered. He stepped closer, raising the dagger. "That power is mine, nephew." Suddenly, Luffy's arm stretched. It shot forward like a whip and caught Teach by the wrist, stopping the blade inches from Luffy's throat. Teach's eyes widened. Luffy's eyes opened, he was smiling. "Got you." Teach barely had time to react before Luffy shouted. "Hey, Pops. Is this enough proof for you?" The word Pops echoed across the deck. Teach turned pale. Behind him stood Whitebeard, towering, furious, flanked by Marco, Vista, and the rest of the crew. This wasn't luck. This was a trap. Whitebeard stepped forward slowly. "So," he said coldly, "this is how you repay my generosity." Teach tried to speak. Whitebeard didn't let him. "Get off my ship," he growled. "Now." Teach blinked. What?" "I said get off my ship," Whitebeard roared. "You're banished." The deck shook. "You hear me, you fat fuck?" Whitebeard continued, voice deadly calm now. "Get in a lifeboat and start rowing. Consider this my last mercy." The crew went silent. "If I ever see you near me," Whitebeard added, eyes burning, "my territory, or my family again, I won't be so merciful." Teach's breathing turned ragged. Desperate, he suddenly lunged. Luffy moved first. Gum, shadow fist. The punch connected with Teach's jaw, launching him across the deck like a cannonball. Teach crashed hard, skidding to a stop. Whitebeard stepped over him, towering like a judge at the end of patience. "You have 3 minutes." Whitebeard raised his Basento. Teach scrambled into the lifeboat, hands shaking as he grabbed the oars. Before pushing off, he looked back at Luffy, eyes burning. "This isn't over, brat." Luffy smiled. "I think it is." Teach snapped. "That smile, that fucking smile, you're just like your bitch of a mother." Luffy's hand went to his sword. "Say that again." Whitebeard's massive hand clamped down on Luffy's shoulder. "He's not worth it, boy." Teach laughed as he rode away, clearly enjoying getting under Luffy's skin. "This isn't over, nephew." The lifeboat disappeared into the darkness. The sea swallowed him whole. Silence returned to the deck. Whitebeard exhaled slowly, then placed a hand on Luffy's head. "You did good." The crew nodded. The family remained. And somewhere out in the dark, hatred began to grow. Morning light spilled across the deck. Luffy was already shouting, "I should be allowed to hunt that fat fuck down." Crew members wisely kept their distance. At the center of the deck stood Whitebeard, arms crossed, expression unmoved as the sea itself. "No," Whitebeard said flatly. Luffy clenched his fists. "He tried to kill me. He tried to steal the yummy no mi. He insulted my mom." Whitebeard didn't raise his voice, and he failed. "That's not the point." Whitebeard's eyes sharpened. "It is the point." Luffy froze. Whitebeard stepped closer, towering over him. "You have Rox's memories inside you. Then you should know this." Luffy swallowed. "Then you know why I." He tapped the deck once with his Basento. "Rox and I had very different approaches." Luffy stiffened. "Rox crushed enemies," Whitebeard continued. "He proved strength by killing." Whitebeard leaned down slightly, eyes level with Luffy's. "I prove it by deciding who isn't worth it." Luffy's jaw tightened. "Teach is defeated," Whitebeard said calmly. "Broken. Exposed. The power he wants is beyond his grasp." Whitebeard's voice hardened. "And the reason I let him live is so he can watch." Luffy blinked. "So he can witness you becoming a legend," Whitebeard continued. "And so he can live knowing Rox was right, and that he was never meant for greatness." Silence fell. Luffy exhaled slowly. Killing Teach would have been simple. But this would haunt him forever. "Yeah," Luffy admitted quietly. "That's way more satisfying." Whitebeard nodded once. "Good." Then his tone changed. Firm. "Final. Now your punishment." Luffy's eyes widened. "Punishment?" "You're on latrine duty for 2 months." Luffy froze. "Huh? What?" The deck went silent. "You think I didn't notice?" Whitebeard continued. "You actually fell asleep." Luffy flinched. "If Marco hadn't thrown that bottle at you," Whitebeard said, "I would have intervened." Luffy's mouth opened. "But I warned you," Whitebeard finished, "and I keep my word." Whitebeard crossed his arms again. "No breakfast for 3 days." Luffy dropped to his knees. "And latrine duty," Whitebeard added calmly, "for 2 months." Luffy slammed his hands on the deck. "NNNNO. Why me?" Whitebeard turned away, already done with the discussion. "Because," he said over his shoulder, "your family." The crew laughed. Luffy suffered. And somewhere far out at sea, a bitter man rode toward destiny, carrying hatred instead of hope. 5 years changed everything. The 3 children who had once scrubbed decks were deckhands no more. They now sailed under Marco's division, trusted, tested, and proven. And somewhere along the way, another change had become impossible to ignore. Luffy and Nami were officially a couple. Nami showed it openly, holding his hand, leaning against him, claiming him without hesitation. Luffy, on the other hand, suffered endlessly for it. Ace and Thatch never missed a chance. Ooh, look at him, Thatch laughed. Our fearless future legend is blushing again. Ace grinned. You gonna cry, Captain in the making? Luffy scowled. Shut up. Nami didn't even look up from her letters. Oh, she said casually, waving a folded page. Najiko says hi. She asked how you are, Ace. Ace blinked. She did? Nami smiled sweetly. Ace looked around. Everyone was laughing. You're evil, he muttered. Nami winked. That night, the ship roared with celebration. It was Nami's 15th birthday. Music played. Barrels cracked open. Firelight danced across smiling faces. Even hardened pirates laughed freely. Whitebeard rose from his seat. The deck fell silent instantly. Girl, said Whitebeard, his voice deep and proud, step forward. Nami did, eyes wide. This is my gift to you. Two pirates carried forward a long, wrapped bundle. Whitebeard revealed it. A Basento, scaled perfectly for her size, balanced, deadly. Nami gasped. Then jumped forward and hugged him without thinking. Whitebeard froze for half a second, then laughed loudly. Gurarara, careful, now, her second gift came next. Whitebeard nodded to Marco. Marco returned carrying a sealed case. He opened it. Inside rested a devil fruit, pale, swirling, humming softly. Whitebeard smiled. You earned it, he said. The wind fruit. A logia. Nami stared. For me? For you, Whitebeard confirmed. Hands shaking, she picked it up. Took a bite. Her face twisted instantly. This is disgusting, she gagged, fighting the urge to vomit. Whitebeard, Marco, Luffy, Ace, and every devil fruit user on deck spoke in perfect unison. We know. The deck erupted with laughter. Nami swallowed hard, tears in her eyes, then straightened. Worth it. The wind shifted. Just slightly, and somewhere deep in the sea, the world gained a new storm. 2 more years passed, and the sea learned to fear their names. Ace turned 18, and 6 months earlier, on his 17th birthday, he had made his choice. He stayed. Not as a guest, not as a kid, but as a son of Whitebeard. That morning, the crew gathered on deck as Whitebeard rose to his feet, Basento planted firmly against the wood. Portgas d Ace, he said. Step forward. Ace did, jaw set, eyes steady. From this day on, Whitebeard continued, you are appointed 2nd Division Commander. The ship erupted. Cheers. Shouts. Fists slammed against barrels. Marco grinned proudly. Even the veterans nodded in approval. Ace exhaled slowly. Yes, Pops. As part of the celebration, Ace, Nami, and Luffy stood together while the tattooist worked. The Whitebeard Jolly Roger was inked onto their backs, bold, permanent, unmistakable. Nami added more. On her right arm, a windmill and tangerines, her past and her future, etched into her skin. By now, the world had taken notice. Their bounties said it all. Portgas d Ace, dead or alive, 550 million berry Wind Witch Nami, dead or alive, 357 million berry. Straw Hat Davy D Luffy, dead or alive, 467 million berry. They were no longer rookies, they were forces of nature. That night, Luffy and Nami spoke privately with Whitebeard. In 7 months, Luffy said, when I turn 17, we're going back to the East Blue. To start our own crew, Nami added. Whitebeard listened quietly. He understood. That didn't make it hurt less. You'll always have a place here, he said gruffly. We know, Pops, Luffy said softly. The new problem appeared almost immediately. Ace was now 2nd Division Commander, which meant Luffy and Nami were under him. Ace tried to act like a boss. Once. All right, listen up. Wham. Nami swept his legs out with her Basento, dropping him flat on his back. Sit, she said sweetly. Another time, Ace wouldn't stop bragging. Commander authority. Luffy sighed. Shadow hole. The deck opened beneath Ace's feet. He vanished with a scream. Moments later, he reappeared, dumped onto a tiny island just off the ship's course. The crew stared, then burst into uncontrollable laughter. Even Whitebeard threw his head back. Gurararara. A retrieval boat was lowered. The crew sent to fetch Ace were laughing so hard they nearly fell out of it. Ace climbed back aboard soaked, furious, and humiliated. "You two are dead." Nami smiled. Luffy grinned. Whitebeard wiped a tear from his eye. Family. Chaos. Love. And the promise of new legends about to sail under their own flag. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Now we will see you in the next video.